Good morning, everybody. We're about to start, so I would like to invite you to take your seats. We're starting our meeting. Please take your seats. I'd like to let you know also that in room CR1 is also going to be streaming of this meeting. For those that cannot fit in this room, you can also follow there, mainly for observers. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear participants, it is my great pleasure to welcome you all to Nairobi, Kenya, and to declare open the 25th meeting of the Subsidiary Body on Scientific, Technical, and Technological Advice of the Convention of Biological Diversity. This is the first meeting of SBSTTA since the adoption of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework last December, and as such, it sets the scene for the task at hand to meet the scientific, technical, and technological needs of parties in their efforts to move from agreement to actions towards our common vision of living in harmony with nature. I invite you all to contribute actively to the accomplishment of this task. Specifically, this SBSTTA meeting will address the monitoring framework, scientific and technical inputs to the mechanisms for planning, monitoring, reporting, and review, the rapid analysis of the programs of work within the context of the Global Biodiversity Framework, plant conservation, recently complete assessments of the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services, and the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. Also, invasive species, sustainable wildlife management, and biodiversity and climate change. The proposed work by this SBSTTA will respond to the requests from the Conference of the Parties made through 11 decisions, named 15.4, 5, 6, 13, 19, 23, 24, 25, 27, 30, and also decision 14/5. I suspect that we all agree that it will be a great challenge to complete our task in 4.5 days only. It is therefore critical that we focus strategically on the scientific and technical tools and options that can empower parties, indigenous peoples and local communities, and stakeholders to implement the goals and targets of the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. If it offers any comfort, you may also wish to note that some of the agenda items will be addressed over 2 meetings of the SBSTA, as well as future meetings of the subsidiary body on implementation. For example, both SBSTA 25 and 26 will focus on finalizing the development of the monitoring framework, as requested by COP15, building on the outcomes of the ad hoc technical expert group on indicators, established for this purpose in May with 45 experts. Furthermore, the consideration of this SBSTA of the mechanisms for planning, monitoring, reporting, and review will focus on the scientific, technical, and technological inputs that should inform the global review of collective progress in the implementation of the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, as a contribution to future deliberations by the subsidiary body on implementation regarding the procedures for the global review. As many of you heard at the workshop on the recently completed assessments of the IBES, which took place here in Nairobi last Friday, its findings, as well as those of the 6th assessment report of the Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change, will consolidate our deliberations on necessary scientific and technical recommendations relating to the work undertaken by the Convention on the issues of diverse value systems, invasive alien species, sustainable wildlife management, and biodiversity and climate change. Distinguished delegates and observers, I wish to thank the members of the SBSTA Bureau for the valuable guidance and unwavering support in preparing for this meeting. My special thanks to the Acting Executive Secretary, David Cooper, and the Secretary team for the hard work and dedication. As a result, we have before us streamlined precision documents with brief yet concrete recommendations. I am very happy to see that our request for it is reflected on the documents. I expect to reflect our efforts to further streamline the set of recommendations in our deliberations with strategic focus. And we'll continue to remind you of this in the coming days. I will very much appreciate your cooperation on this regard. It's an honor to serve for the 3rd time as SBSTA chair, and I count on your continued support for the timely completion of our mandates for this meeting, including a smooth election of incoming SBSTA Bureau members. So I wish you all fruitful deliberations and look forward to valuable outcomes in the spirit of cooperation and collaboration. Thank you very much. Now I invite Ms. Susan Gardner, Director of UNEP Ecosystem Division, representing the Executive Director of the UN Environment Program, Ms. Inger Andersen. Ms. Gardner, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. It's a great pleasure to be able to welcome all of you to Nairobi, of course, the home of UNEP and the capital of a nation that is teeming with the kind of biodiversity that the world has committed to protect under the Convention on Biological Diversity. It's truly a pleasure for UNEP to host the 25th SBSTA meeting, not the least because UNEP itself is a scientific and technological organization. Of course, we must begin by thanking our chair, Biólogo Benítez Díaz, muchísimas gracias. Thank you so much, Chair, for his drive to ensure the strong science and the support of the CBD for the last 5 years in this important role. Friends, at COP15, the nations of the world, when we adopted the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and this important package of associated decisions, we understood that to deliver on these commitments, we need a whole of government and whole of society approach. We need flexible and innovative finance, and from many different sources. We need shifts in domestic policy that dislodge harmful subsidies and practices, and of course, we know we need the best available science, drawing on the technical capacities and the available technologies. And of course, this is where all of you come in. This meeting is an important milestone to ensure the scientific, technical, and technological foundation for action to halt and reverse biodiversity loss on the way to COP16, but also beyond. As you discuss how to strengthen this foundation, remember, this builds on your past successes, but it also will be informing future action, and the world is listening. At this meeting, you will remind the world of the close linkages between biodiversity loss and climate change, as well as biodiversity loss, pollution, and waste. So the foundations you're building must be strong enough to support all three crises. Thank you for ensuring that the best scientific approaches for transparency and accountability for delivering the GBF remain high on your agenda. Your work to take stock of progress in developing the global monitoring framework and considering the scientific, technical, and technological inputs to the global review of COP17 is crucial for developing and implementing the national biodiversity strategies and action plans. While discussions continue around the global monitoring framework, backed by the ad hoc technical expert group, we know that parties are hard at work developing and implementing the national monitoring frameworks, and these frameworks will inform action and progress at the national level while also helping to build an understanding of biodiversity change at the global level. They will form the backbone of global monitoring frameworks. And it's clear that nations will need investment and scientific and technical capacity to be able to truly build these frameworks. Rest assured that UNEP is together with you every step of the way. We support the GBF implementation as something that's embedded in UNEP's midterm strategy and our program of work. And we play a key role actually in supporting across the entire UN system to deliver on biodiversity, as envisioned by the UN Common Approach to Biodiversity and Nature-Based Solutions. UNEP provides technical advice on solutions to support country teams, integrating biodiversity into UN country cooperation frameworks, and providing support to regional ministerial processes and parties at large for as you take forward your commitments from COP15. Friends, it's been almost a year since the world adopted the Global Biodiversity Framework, and this year has passed in a flash, as it will remain to move very quickly until 2030. The clock is ticking ever louder and more urgently, and we know we must act now. I wish you very productive discussions, and I look forward to a future where the world truly builds nature-positive societies built on the scientific, technical, and technological foundation that all of you are providing today. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Gardner, and to express the support of UNEP at global level and also at national level. Now I invite the Acting Executive Secretary of the Convention on Biological Diversity, Mr. David Cooper, to address the meeting. David, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, it gives me great pleasure to welcome you all today to the 25th meeting of the Subsidiary Body on Scientific, Technical and Technological Advice. I'd like to begin by once again congratulating all parties on the adoption of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework last December in Montreal. We're here now to further strengthen our collective efforts to implement the framework with scientific, technical and technological inputs from this body. I would like to thank the people of Kenya and our colleagues at the United Nations Environment Programme for warmly welcoming us to Nairobi. As we just heard from the representative of the Executive Director, we have ongoing strong commitment from UNEP to support implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, directly and through its work in galvanizing the wider UN system. I'd like to thank Inga Anderson and her team for this. And on behalf of the Secretariat, I offer also my sincere thanks and admiration to the chair of this subsidiary body, Mr. Ezequiel Benitez-Diaz of Mexico, not only for his dedication and persistent support, but also his valuable scientific and technical guidance on various issues of the Convention throughout the previous intersessional period, including during the COVID-19 pandemic, as well as the months following COP15 until today. Distinguished delegates, colleagues, we have here more than 1,000 registered participants representing 149 countries, and I hear that 670 or more are here already from 135 countries already. Given the importance of this meeting, the first intergovernmental meeting under the Convention since the adoption of the framework, we have been able to finance on request a representative from each eligible party. And I would like to thank a number of governments for their generous financial support: Australia, Austria, Canada, Finland, Germany, New Zealand, Sweden, Switzerland, the Republic of Korea, and the United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. I'm very pleased also to acknowledge the presence here of Indigenous peoples and local communities, their representatives, their experts in this meeting, and I look forward to their active engagement to ensure that their views are heard. Distinguished delegates, the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework is ambitious. Following the recent midterm review of progress of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, the imperative of ensuring its successful implementation is clearer than ever. Since its adoption, we have made great strides towards implementing the framework. In August, the Global Biodiversity Framework Fund was launched at the 7th Assembly of the Global Environmental Facility. I call upon donor countries to join Canada, Germany, and the UK to contribute to this new fund, established at the request of COP, to ensure that additional support for the rapid implementation of the framework can be fast-tracked. In September, the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, co-led by our very own Elizabeth Marema, launched its recommendations. And of course, parties are busy developing their national targets aligned with the framework, updating their national biodiversity strategies and action plans, and putting in place the measures for action. Indigenous peoples, civil society, local governments, business, and the financial sector are all engaged in implementation. Together, we are moving from agreement to action. But there is much more to be done. This 25th meeting of SBSTTA will flesh out the scientific and technical details of many of the actions we agreed on at COP15. As was highlighted by the Chair, we look forward to an update from the Ad hoc Technical Expert Group on indicators regarding their progress in finalising the development of the monitoring framework. And this body will provide important inputs to ensure the development of robust mechanisms for planning, monitoring, reporting and review. The reports and assessments of the IPBES and its global assessment report on biodiversity and ecosystem services in particular have contributed greatly to our collective knowledge about how to address the drivers of biodiversity loss and provided the scientific foundation upon which the framework was built. The recent work of IPBES will support the implementation of the framework, particularly the targets on sustainable use, invasive alien species and values. In the same vein, the IPCC has contributed to our understanding and recognition of the interdependence of climate, ecosystems and biodiversity and human societies. Let us continue to make the fullest use of the outcomes of these intergovernmental assessment processes in our work. Distinguished delegates, dear colleagues, I have spoken of reports, of processes and of targets. But all of us from every corner of our planet have daily reminders of the scope and urgency of our challenge. We have just over 6 years left to undertake the actions necessary to achieve the 23 targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. Since February, it's been my privilege to lead the Secretariat team during this critical early phase of generating momentum towards implementation. From Montreal to Rome and New York, from Kunming to Kinshasa, we have been unwavering in our dedication and energized by our results. We cannot afford to falter or equivocate. The stakes are too high. Mr. Chair, members of the Subsidiary Bureau, party delegates, and all participants, the Secretariat, of course, stands ready as always to support your work this week and in the coming years. I wish you all a successful meeting. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Cooper, for your introductory remarks. I would like to reiterate my congratulations to you and your team for the hard work in preparing on this, for this meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now move to agenda item 2, organizational matters. And before we start our work, I would like to invite Secretariat to provide some logistical information. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. And good morning, distinguished delegates. It is a great pleasure to see all of you again here in Nairobi. First of all, please note that this meeting is being held in person only. There is no online or hybrid participation available. All plenary sessions will, however, be streamed on YouTube in all 6 official UN languages. First, let me now begin with information on how to use the microphones. To request the floor, press the button once and the light will turn green. When the chair gives you the floor, the technician will activate your microphone. The light will turn red and you can start speaking. Delegates seated behind microphones allocated to indigenous peoples and local communities and major stakeholder groups such as women, youth, NGOs, and business and industry should identify their organizations before commencing their interventions. Delegates are requested to keep within the assigned time when taking the floor and to speak at a reasonable speed to facilitate the work of the interpreters. I will explain later in detail the assigned time for interventions. Secondly, regarding statements, delegates are requested to upload their written statement using the online application on the meeting webpage. In case you encounter any difficulties in using the online system, delegates may send the statement via email to statements, spelling STATEMENTS at CBD.int. It greatly facilitates the work of the interpreters if you upload your statement prior to your delivery. However, they will be posted on the website only after delivery. In any case, statements must be submitted within 1 hour after the close of the session in which the agenda item was considered. In your submission, please make sure to include the name of your country or organization and the agenda item on the first page of the document that is uploaded. Uploading instructions were included in your priority pass email along with your dedicated link, which will lead you directly to the uploading page. The chair will be limiting interventions to 5 minutes when you speak on behalf of the regions, 3 minutes for individual parties and major stakeholder groups, and 2 minutes for observers as time allows. A clock is provided for you on the screen to help you to manage your time, but please do not speed up your reading. Thirdly, regarding the meeting rooms, CR2, the current room, will be used for plenary session, and CR1 set up as overflowing room with sound in English. Should delegates wish to follow the session in different UN languages, please connect to YouTube live stream on your laptop or phone through the meeting calendar and select the desired languages. CR1 and CR3 and 4 will be used for the contact groups. Both of these rooms are equipped with programmable electronic nameplates. Specifically, when you are in these contact group rooms, for United Nations organization, intergovernmental organization, indigenous peoples and local community organization, and major stakeholder groups will be allocated rows in advance in both contact group rooms by category and not by name of organization. Delegates from parties and other governments are kindly requested to consult the SBSTTA-25 meeting webpage under the header of List of Microphone Numbers for Contact Groups, which provides a list of each country's login code and step-by-step instruction on how to program the electronic nameplate. Please note that only one plate per party or other governments can be programmed in the same room. And if the country enters the same code twice, the most recent one will override the previous selection. It is therefore important for parties to coordinate among themselves with regard to who should activate the respective country plate. Next, regarding side events. Side events will take place at 1:15 p.m. each day of the meeting, starting today, and each evening at 6:15 p.m. starting tomorrow. Please consult the online schedule as well as the monitors for the event title, location, and time. Next, regarding the share your content link on the meeting webpage, you will note Share Your Content tab located in the right-hand side of the meeting web portal. Using this link, parties and observers are invited to share publications, information materials, and event flyers which are relevant to the issues being addressed by this meeting. Finally, let me offer a few words about our meeting venue. The entrance to the venue is open daily from 7:30 a.m. until 8 p.m. Delegates may remain on the premises as late as necessary and may exit during the evening and late night hours as per meeting exigencies. However, there is no re-entry after 8 p.m. The River Cafe and Delegate Lounge will be operational over the weekend. During the week, they will operate under extended hours as follows. The River Cafe will operate from 7 a.m. to 8 p.m., serving breakfast, lunch, and dinner. The Delegate Lounge will operate during the same hours, but will remain open until 11 p.m. for coffee and snacks. Please note that food is not allowed in the meeting rooms. Drinks, water may be brought in if they are in a container with a lid. We look forward to your kind cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you, Secretariat. And I'd like to remind you, please help me to run the meeting as smooth as possible by respecting the times. I will repeat that interventions can be up to 5 minutes only when they are on behalf of regions, 3 minutes for individual parties and major stakeholder groups, and 2 minutes for observers. Please focus on your comments on the different recommendations so we can go straight to the matter and to work as efficient as possible. With this, brings us to the adoption of the agenda and organization of work. The Executive Secretary, in consultation with the Bureau, prepared a provisional agenda for this 25th meeting of SBSTA. The provisional agenda of SBSTA-25 is contained in document SBSTA/25-1/Rep1, and the annotations to the provisional agenda are contained in document SBSTA-25/1/Add1-Ref3. So I submit the provisional agenda for adoption. So I see no objections. The agenda is adopted. Regarding the organization of work, the Executive Secretary, in consultation with the Bureau, proposed the allocation of tasks for the meeting as described in Annex 1 of the annotated agenda contained in document SBSTA/25/1/Add1-Ref3. During this meeting, all sessions will be held in plenary. With this explanation, I submit the organization of work for approval. I see no objections, so the organization of work is approved. Now we will proceed to the election of officers. I'll give the floor to the Secretariat to explain how we will elect Bureau members. So, Secretariat, you have the floor. We're moving very fast. I hope we can keep the same pace.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning to all delegates. Pursuant to Rule 26, Paragraph 3 of its Rules of Procedure, the Conference of the Parties at its 14th meeting held in Sharm el-Sheikh, Egypt, in November 2018, elected Mr. Ezequiel Benitez-Diaz of Mexico as chair of the subsidiary body for a term of office extending until the end of the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties. Following the elections at the 24th meeting of the subsidiary body held in Geneva in March 2022, and further replacements from 2 parties, the Bureau of the 25th meeting of the subsidiary body currently comprises the following members: Mr. Ezequiel Benitez-Diaz, Mexico, that's the chair. And then for the African states, you have Mrs. Mary May Muzungaili, Seychelles, Mr. Bruno Mikisa from Gabon. For Asia Pacific states, there is Mr. Bilal Tishat, Jordan, Ms. Gwen Sisson, Palau. For Eastern European states, you have Mr. Jan Plesnik, Czechia, Ms. Senka Barudanovic, Bosnia and Herzegovina. We have Tatiana Lipiskaya, Belarus, a substitute for Bosnia and Herzegovina for the Nagoya Protocol. For Latin American and Caribbean states, we have Mr. Adams Toussaint, St. Laurent, San Lucia, Ms. Mariela Canepa Montalvo, Peru. For Western European and other states, we have Ms. Marina from Finland, we have Ms. Tia Stevens from Australia, we have Mr. Gott Vort Hansen from Norway, the substitute for Australia for the Cartagena Protocol and Nagoya Protocols. In order to have staggered terms of office within the Bureau, the subsidiary body will elect 5 new members to serve on the Bureau for a term commencing at the end of the present meeting and ending at the close of the 27th meeting. These new members will replace the outgoing members from Australia, Bosnia and Herzegovina, Palau, St. Lucia, and Seychelles. One of the Bureau members will be elected as rapporteur for the meeting on the basis of a recommendation by the Bureau. Mr. Ezequiel Benitez-Diaz has served as chair of SBSTTA for its 23rd, 24th, and now 25th meeting. In accordance with Rule 26, Paragraph 3 of the Rules of Procedure, and Section C, Paragraph 10 of the Consolidated Modus Operandi of SBSTTA, the new chair is expected to be elected by the Conference of the Parties at the resumed second part of its 15th meeting, which is scheduled to take place later this week. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Secretariat. In recent weeks, through the respective members of the SBSTTA Bureau, regions were invited to coordinate within the respective regional groups to nominate new Bureau members and to ensure that select candidates have the full support of the governments and institutions to dedicate time and travel to represent your region in the SBSTTA Bureau. It was also pointed out that as SBSTTA is being tasked to serve the protocols, it is preferable if nominees to the SBSTTA Bureau are from a party to all 3 instruments, meaning the Convention, the Cartagena Protocol, and Nagoya Protocol. Alternatively, and as provided for in the text of the protocols, if a nominee is from a country that is not party to one of the protocols, then the region should also nominate a substitute for a country that is party to the concerned protocol. It was emphasized that all regions should work internally to provide nominations and indicate that we will take up this item on the first session of this meeting. Now I open the floor to the regions for their nominations. So representatives can ask for the floor. Otherwise, I will go in alphabetical order. So I call the representative of the African states. Meanwhile, I see Czechia. You have the floor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, distinguished delegates, ladies and gentlemen, friends. It really is a pleasure, and I'm proud to announce that the Central and Eastern European Group agreed to nominate Professor Tauland Bino from Albania as Substa Bureau member. Professor Bino is a lecturer in ecology and strategic environment assessment, having broad knowledge not only biodiversity but also from environmental sciences, and at the same time he is a president of the Albanian Ornithological Society. But he is not a blue sky scientist. He has an outstanding record of implementation on various projects and programs. So we are pleased to nominate him to serve as a Bureau member. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Czechia. Now I give the floor to Gabon, representing the African states.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Gabon parlant au nom de l'Afrique. L'Afrique donc a sélectionné Monsieur Kenneth Henrik Kibangu de Namibie. C'est un scientifique qui a travaillé longtemps sur les ressources naturelles. Je vous remercie.
Thank you very much, Gabon. Now I give the floor to, I see, moving my screen, the representative from Asia and Pacific states. Jordan, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Asia and Pacific agreed to nominate Mr. Jahidul Kabir from Bangladesh. He is a Deputy Chief Conservation of Forests, Bangladesh Forest Department, Ministry of Environment, Forest and Climate Change of Bangladesh. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now I'd like to give the floor to the representative of the Latin American and Caribbean states. I guess it's St. Lucia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, I would like to defer because there's a new development, and I would like to make a nomination a bit later. I'm sorry about that. Thanks.
Thank you, St. Lucia. I hope quite soon you can provide us with the name of the new Bureau member for Substam from the Grulac region. Now I give the floor to WEOG representative. Australia, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. Australia, on behalf of JOSCANS, as part of WEOG, has the pleasure of nominating Mr. Scott Wilson from Canada as our new member for the Substa Bureau. Acknowledging Canada are not a party to the Cartagena or Nagoya protocols, we are also nominating Mr. Niklaus Wagner from Switzerland, who will be our substitute representative for matters relating to the sub-protocols. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Australia. Just give me a second, please. Thank you very much. So we have already nominations for 4 out of the 5 regions. So we have from Africa, Mr. Kenneth Wisef from Namibia. For the Asia and Pacific, Mr. Jahidul Kabir from Bangladesh, from Central and Eastern Europe, Mr. Professor Taulant Bino from Albania, and from WIOG, Mr. Scott Wilson from Canada, with substitute by Mr. Niklaus Wagner from Switzerland for both protocols. So I hope soon our colleagues from the GRULAC region can provide us a name, so we will revise this issue at the beginning of the afternoon session after lunch. I hope by that time we can have the full set of candidates to proceed with the elections. Thank you very much. We will now proceed to the designation of chairs of our sessions. In my capacity as a chair of this meeting, I have decided to request some assistance from my colleague on SBSTTA Bureau for the chairing of this meeting of SBSTTA. I will chair our sessions today. Item 4, scheduled for tomorrow morning, will be chaired by Ms. Marina von Weissenberg from Finland, while I will chair items 5 and 6 scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. I will chair also the remaining sessions and also for the consideration of the CRPs and L documents. Wish me luck. Other Bureau members will be co-chairing contact groups as appropriate. So I also will now like to propose the rapporteur for this meeting. After consultation with the Bureau, I propose Mr. Bilal Quishtat of Jordan as the rapporteur. I see no objections, so I invite Mr. Quishtat to take a seat at the podium, please. Should we clap or not? Very good. So before we go to the next item, I would like to suggest that in order to make efficient use of time and to allow more time for discussions, we refrain from making individual statements to thank or congratulate the chair, the host country, or the secretariat for the preparation of the documents. Therefore, I would like to invite the rapporteur to make a statement of thanks on behalf of all participants so that this can be avoided in individual interventions. Mr. Quishtat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. On behalf of all the participants at this meeting, I take this opportunity to congratulate the Chair of the subsidiary body and members of the Bureau for their hard work in preparation for SBSTTA-25. And I wish you the best of success for this meeting. On behalf of all of us, I thank the Acting Executive Secretary of the Secretariat and his team for the high-quality meeting documents and logistics arrangements. I also thank the United Nations office at Nairobi for their hospitality and those parties that have provided generous funding to facilitate the participation of developing country representatives. I have no doubt that our deliberation will be very productive. Thank you, Chair, for giving me this opportunity to speak on behalf of all the participants. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Bilal, our rapporteur. We will now take up agenda item 3, facilitating the implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and the monitoring of its progress. There are 4 sub-items under item 3, and this morning we will begin with sub-item 3A, monitoring framework for the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. As you are all aware, during the 15th meeting of the Conference of the Parties adopt the monitoring framework for the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and decided to consider at its 16th meeting with a review of the monitoring framework in order to finish its development and to consider the requirements for further work to fully operationalize the monitoring framework. To that end, the Conference of the Parties also decided to establish an ad hoc technical expert group on indicators for the monitoring framework. This expert group, which will work until the next substamp, is tasked with providing A, technical advice on the remaining and unresolved issues to the monitoring framework, including gaps, methodologies, disaggregation of headline indicators, and questions to construct binary indicators, among others. B, guidance on the use of indicators in national planning and reporting. C, guidance on ways to fill temporal and spatial data gaps. And D, advice on existing capacity, gaps, and needs. This ad hoc technical expert group on indicators was established in May this year and is being co-chaired by Ms. Maria Cecilia Londoño Murcia of Colombia and Mr. James Williams of the United Kingdom of the Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Agenda item 3A includes an update of the work of this ad hoc technical expert group, including the work of the global indicators based on binary responses contained in the annex to document SBSTTA-25/2, which has been produced by this ad hoc technical expert group on indicators. Also, an advanced version of the report of the 3rd meeting of the ATEC, held from 3 to 6 October, just a couple of weeks ago, has been made available for your reference on the meeting webpage. Before giving the floor to the Secretariat to introduce the document for this agenda item, I would like to invite Mr. James Williams, co-chair of the ad hoc technical expert group, to provide us with an update of the work of the group so far, including the result of the recent in-person meeting held in Montreal last week. Mr. Williams, you have the floor.
Thank you very much indeed, Chair. Just get the presentation up on the screen before I start, please. Thank you very much indeed. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for the opportunity for Maria and I to provide this update on progress on the indicators ARTEG to Substa. As our Chair has noted, we have a very large and complex mandate, and the ARTEG is due to run to COP16. Space on the slide does not allow me to provide full text, but I will note that there is a considerable detail under the first point, and I will come back to that later. We are approximately halfway through the time allocated and have been making considerable progress. The ARTEG has held 2 online meetings so far. The first meeting focused on understanding which of the indicators in the ARTEG's terms of reference the individual experts would focus on and reviewing a draft work plan. And we then worked to finalise that work plan and collate information on who would work on each indicator and develop outlines for the metadata that would be needed for each indicator, focusing on the questions that we have been asked to address. The second meeting focused on the binary indicators, of which more in a moment. 5 subgroups were established to break the tasks into more manageable chunks, and a considerable amount of editing followed the meeting to collate views on possible questions and answers in order to produce the SBSTTA-25 paper. The third meeting, at the start of October, was a face-to-face discussion in Montreal where we reviewed progress in answering those questions and developing metadata for each of the headline indicators, and started consideration of some of the other aspects of the work plan. I apologise, the reference there is slightly wrong, but it is on the meeting webpage. So, coming back to the binary indicators, I understand that these were not discussed in any detail at COP15 and potentially are complex in nature, with and or within the titles of the draft binary indicators and in the questions that might be asked of parties. At its second meeting, the RTEG decided that it would make sense for parties in their national reports to be able to provide more nuanced answers than just yes or no, and that answers might need to vary according to the question being asked. And as the Substa paper explains, these questions will allow an understanding of the overall progress through aggregation of the yes and no categorical answers. The RTEG also decided at its second meeting that it would make sense to break complex questions into simpler parts in order that parties could be clear about the progress that is being made against a target for which a binary indicator is being proposed. The example here for target 6 shows how that could work. Further detail for all of the binary indicators proposed is in the annex to paper SBSTTA-2502. I should note that this is a work in progress. Definitions for some of the terms are needed so that there is clarity to help parties respond to the questions, and it is possible that the approach proposed for binary indicators may need to be tweaked as the RTEG addresses the rest of its mandate, for example in wording of questions or possible answers. At the third meeting of the RTEG, each of the headline indicators was reviewed in detail and notes were added to the documents being developed on each. A summary table was produced, which is in the report of the meeting, which summarises follow-up actions needed and our understanding of its status of development. To make sure that progress continues at pace, one or more chaperones were identified to facilitate the follow-up actions. And I'll note, some of these indicators are really challenging. This is not easy. Within the mandate or terms of reference of the RTEG, there is a paragraph which focuses on work to identify critical gaps. As co-chairs, we have interpreted that as focusing on the headline and binary indicators listed in the monitoring framework. And our work plan includes review of the component and complementary indicators, which can also help to address these gaps. However, there are different points of view, and I note that, for example, on the discussion forum, there have been calls for more headline indicators. That is a political rather than a technical decision, so if there is consensus that parties do want more headline indicators, we feel that there should be a clear decision to that effect. Moving on to next steps and looking forwards, there's a bunch of parallel work being undertaken by others, which we will integrate into the RTEG's work. I plan to be at the Working Group 8J discussions in Geneva to understand better the discussions there about traditional knowledge indicators, for example. And we are happy to similarly work with the Financial Technical Expert Group and are maintaining close liaison with UNEP WCMC and making good use of linkages to other groups as appropriate. 2 more online meetings in December and January and a further face-to-face meeting in March are planned before providing a report to SBSTTA-26. The RTEG is thus roughly halfway through its work plan. The aim is to have a single draft decision going to COP16, which would bring together the recommendations arising from SBSTTA-25 together with the recommendations which arise from SBSTTA-26, and if parties would find it useful, we could run one or more webinars to introduce people to the work that has been undertaken with the aim of informing you before the discussions at SBSTTA-25. Some key messages, if I may, please. The RTEC is functioning well, with good engagement from all members, and there's lots of work being done between the meetings. The paper you have in front of you focuses on the proposals for making binary indicators categorical and for simplifying the questions parties are to be asked to answer in their national reports. Considerable progress is also being made on the headline indicators, and the document reporting on the face-to-face meeting in Montreal gives an overview. And then, to repeat, we're about halfway through our work. We do have an ongoing process here. I'm, of course, happy to answer questions, either now or in the margins, but before I do so, Maria and I would like to offer thanks to all of the members of the RTEC for their hard work, and to the Secretariat for their excellent logistical and process support, and thank you also to the translators for their help in making this presentation. Maria and I are meeting with the Secretariat on a fortnightly basis to keep the process moving forwards. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Mr. Williams, for that informative update. I would like to thank you and your co-chair, as well as all the members of the ATEC and the Secretariat for your hard work today. I had the opportunity to attend the meeting in Montreal, and I can testify to the hard work and the commitment of all members. I am confident that with your help, SBSTA will be able to provide the concrete and useful advice to cope on this important issue. Now, I would like to invite the Secretariat to introduce the document for this item. Secretariat, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. For this agenda item, the Secretariat has prepared document CBD/SABSTA/25/2 Monitoring Framework for the Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. This document was prepared pursuant to Decision 15/5 and contains an update on the work of the ATEC, an update on the online forum, and an annex with a list of proposed questions for national reports for compiling the global indicators based on binary responses as described in COP Decision 15/5 Table 1 and elaborated in the terms of reference of the ATEC. The annex developed by the ATEC is the result of their work related to Item 1E of the Terms of Reference of the ATEC, which requests that the ATEC advise on the wording of questions to construct binary indicators to be used in national reports. The document also contains a draft recommendation for the consideration of SBSTTA-25. It is important to note that this agenda item will not cover the full scope of the work required on the monitoring framework outlined in COP Decision 15/5. Other aspects of the work on the monitoring framework will be considered by SBSTTA-26. In addition, the subsidiary body has before it an information document, CBD/IND/ATEG/2023/3/2, which contains a report of the work of the ATEG at their third meeting. Additionally, all documents of the ATEG are available online on the ATEG website. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gillian. Before I open the floor for interventions, I would like to remind you that the work of the ATEC will last until the next meeting of SBSTA. We shall focus our deliberations today on the update of the work of the ATEC and the annex to document 25/2 on global indicators based on binary responses. I would like, therefore, to encourage you to keep your statements short and concise and to focus on the essential points. I will be limiting interventions, as you know, 5 minutes for parties speaking on behalf of regions, 3 minutes for individual parties and major stakeholder groups, and 2 minutes for observers. Please submit the full text to the Secretariat. Please note, however, that your key points, especially those that you would like to have reflect in the draft recommendation should be read out in the room. May I state from the outset that the following intervention by representatives of IPLCs and non-governmental organizations will give a brief chance to parties that may wish to comment on or support any specific proposal made by these organizations. This approach will also be followed during the review of the conference room papers at a larger stage. Now I open the floor for interventions on the monitoring framework. I give the floor to Egypt, followed by Cameroon.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Egypt is speaking on behalf of Africa. Africa welcomes the adoption of the provisional monitoring framework by the CBD parties at COP15, as well as the establishment of ad hoc technical expert group to review and refine monitoring framework for consideration ahead of CBD COP15. Certainly, we welcome the progress already made, and we appreciate it very much. Mr. Chairman, a comprehensive and functional monitoring framework is essential for parties to finish developing and implementing their updated MBSAP and national targets in accordance with the GBF. The GBF monitoring framework should take advantage of a wide variety of indicators, including individuals indicators and composite indicators metrics that incorporate multiple indicators to provide the best possible measures of biodiversity status and our impacts. However, in the document CBD/Substa/25/2, critical gaps at the share of the group already said still exist, and methodologies for many indicators are not yet clear. We hope this will be resolved before CBD COP15. Our message to our participants here and the group as well, we should look at including or identifying the linkages to fill gaps in and streamline the monitoring framework. In addition, the relationship between individual and composite indicators need to be clarified. Furthermore, we must refine our indicator progress for ecological integrity and connectivity. Mr. Chairman, regarding the recommendations, we don't have much to say except just changing few words, like in paragraph 1, we prefer to use welcome instead of taking note, the same thing for paragraph 2. However, in paragraph 2, we need to include the need to share information on methodologies of indicators at the end of the sentence. Mr. Chairman, the annex on the binary indicator questions need further discussion during this meeting. There is still many issues that need further clarifications, and we propose to add not applicable, especially for countries that they cannot deal with yes and no. I mean, for example, countries in Africa, inland countries, they cannot deal with coastal and marine issues, for example. Many other indicators, we found that there are overlap, especially indicators in 23, the target 22.3, and the same thing for 24. They are overlapping with financial targets as well, so we need to reduce this kind of overlapping. The same thing for target 13.4, that where we have already CBD decision on digital sequence information, DSI. So we hope the proposed issues will be discussed and agreed upon during this meeting. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Egypt, speaking on behalf of the African countries. I remind you again that we will focus our deliberations mainly on the annex we have on the binary indicators. Of course, there's still a lot of work on the headline indicators, methodologies, and the work that our colleague described. We have a clear mandate from the COP to that group. So I will also appreciate your comments on the draft recommendation. It's a short recommendation in paragraphs 18 and 19 of the document, and also on the annex on the binary indicators. Now I have on the list, it was another country that disappears, but I have United Kingdom followed by Japan and Germany. Please indicate if you are speaking on behalf of a region. Thank you. UK.
Thank you, Chair. The UK would like to thank the Secretariat for its note including an update on the ATEC's progress and the plans for finalizing its work. We also thank the ATEC co-chair for his update. We do not underestimate the magnitude of the task that ATEC members have been asked to fulfill, and we are grateful to them for working tirelessly and voluntarily, often in addition to their day jobs, to achieve the very long list of things to do in time for the intersessional meetings in May next year. We look forward to welcoming the ATEC in Cambridge in March 2024 for their second face-to-face meeting, following which they will provide us with a full report at SBSTTA-25. Distinguished delegates, time is of the essence. We need to use the 4 days ahead of us constructively to try to make as much progress as possible on the substance in the Secretariat's note, and to give further steer to ATEC to facilitate its work as appropriate. We must be pragmatic and realistic about what the ATEC can deliver in the remaining 5 months, and we must avoid trying to expand its mandate with additional tasks, which might put at risk its ability to complete its work in time for SBSTTA-25. The more agreement we can reach here and now, the better chance we will have at SBSTTA-26 and SBI-4 to agree sound recommendations to COP16 on the monitoring framework and the reporting and review mechanisms. The UK is ready to fully engage in the discussions on the binary indicators, noting that parties are required to use them in their national reports, along with the headline indicators, and noting also that the recommendations from here will be key input to SBI discussions. We agree with the proposed approach to have categorical answers rather than strictly yes-no answers to complicated questions. We also agree that we need to break the questions into sensible parts to help clearly demonstrate parties' progress. We support integrating the questions and categorical answers in the annex to this paper into the template for the national reports with some amendments. We note, however, that to ensure a cohesive set of indicators, these would need to be revised once ATEC completes its work on headline indicators. We do not wish the list of questions to be expanded. On the contrary, we think this list could be streamlined to avoid excessive reporting burden and to ensure that we do not detract attention from work on headline indicators. We do not think it is necessary to address every component of each target. We must also refrain from including questions not related to the target in question. We have submitted our proposals to the Secretariat to reflect these points. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, UK, and also thank you for hosting the next presidential meeting of the ATEC next year in March. Now I'll give the floor to Japan, followed by Germany and Nigeria.
Japan would like to take this opportunity to thank the ATEC members for their hard work and dedication. Setting indicators at an early stage is essential for the implementation of the KMGBF based on the lessons learned from the implementation of the Aichi targets. Japan recognizes that our discussions toward the finalization of the binary indicators at this meeting will be a very important step for finalizing the monitoring framework. Japan understands that the primary purpose of the binary indicators should be to fill the gaps of the headline indicators and to monitor the progress of the implementation at each country by taking clear and focused questions. In this regard, we would like to emphasize the importance of setting simple but effective indicators that corresponds to the targets. Therefore, Japan would like to suggest that to make the binary questions and the options as simple and clear as possible and reduce the overall number of questions and answer options. Although we understand the proposals for the response criteria for the binary questions will be provided at later stage, we should be mindful that the importance of the definitions and guidance to respond such questions will be essential for enhancing the effective use of the binary indicators at each country. Therefore, we express our hope that the Secretariat will be able to prepare appropriate guidance documents based on the discussion the parties will have at this meeting. Japan also has specific comments for some of the proposed binary indicators. For the target 8, since the ocean acidification is an event resulting from the climate change, while we understand the importance of the issue, we believe that there is no need to have dedicated question for the ocean acidification to reduce the number of questions. Regarding the question 13.4, Japan considers it is too early to discuss the question concerning to the matters related to digital sequence information on genetic resources, as the benefit sharing mechanism for DSI are still under discussion, as stated in Decision 15/9. If binary indicator questions related to DSI needs to be established, it should be discussed after such mechanisms are agreed. In this regard, along with some minor changes, we will submit our written comments for clarifications on some terminologies without which it would be difficult to accurately measuring the progress of the target. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Japan. I'll give the floor to Germany, followed by Nigeria and the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Throughout the negotiations of the GBF, we have acknowledged the importance of a robust monitoring framework. And when adopting the framework in Montreal, we were very aware of the work ahead of us in this regard. We therefore very much welcome the work carried out by the ATEC, and specifically would like to thank all the experts serving on this ATEC for their commitment and dedication. We welcome the list of proposed global indicators collated from binary responses and express our general support for the proposal. We would, however, like to raise the following points. Whilst we agree that some indicators need a set of questions to capture the full content of the respective goals or targets, we need to keep in mind the overall capacities available for reporting and urge us all to compromise between what we need to monitor and what would be nice to know. Several of the questions would benefit, in our view, from reworking in order to improve their clarity, both in terms of language used as well as regards to what they intend to measure and the ease of answering. And we will submit some proposals in writing to that. I'm not going through the nitty-gritty details here. This is crucial that the binary indicators have a clear formulation and that the proposed questions allow us to effectively measure their degree of achievement with respect to the target. We certainly support additional explanatory information that includes definitions and interpretations for each question and answer, and particular conditions that must be met to differentiate between yes, partially, and yes, fully, as it was shown on the screen by the chair of the ATEC. We request that this additional explanatory information be shared as soon as possible. We also would like to stress the importance of properly defining the methodology for computing these global indicators from these binary questions. This should include a clear explanation on how global level indicators will be calculated based on the binary questions and how the aggregation will be done if not all answers are yes, and how the nuanced answers will be reflected. In addition, we would like to stress that there is a need to ensure coherence between the monitoring framework and the reporting template, especially considering that across the sections 3 and 4 of the Annex 2 to Decision 5/6, the template for the national reports is expected to include responses to the indicators from the framework. We would therefore think that the proposed binary indicators need some further refinement, and we look forward to a constructive discussion here at Substa. We'll submit specific amendments in written form, And we would also like to highlight, to close with, the need that parties be given the opportunity to review the monitoring framework as a whole, considering the full set of indicators at a later stage. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Germany. Yeah, of course, well, so far I've been here quite support for the approach, the importance to have a limited number of questions and also indicators. Some are suggesting a reduction to reduce the burden while this goes for reporting. So I'm taking note of your comments. Meanwhile, I'll give the floor to Nigeria, followed by the Russian Federation and Canada. Nigeria, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor. Nigeria welcomes the progress of the ad hoc technical expert group on indicators for the KMGPF and thank the Secretariat for the opportunity to be part of the ATEC work. We also welcome the proposed way forward for the global indicators constructed from binary responses as provided in the annex to this document, CBD-Substar-25/2. We would also like to emphasize the importance of adopting a professional monitoring framework at COP16 next year. We support the ATEC to continue the work to address critical gaps as stated by the co-chair of the group to improve the monitoring framework, in particular on the headline indicators that do not have existing methodology. We also support the text proposed by the African group, and we have submitted our statement in written form to the Secretariat. I thank you.
Thank you very much for the brief intervention, Nigeria. I appreciate it. Now I give the floor to the Russian Federation, followed by Canada and Norway.
Доброе утро. Спасибо, господин председатель. Мы внимательно послушали предыдущие страны и согласны с многими высказанными там позициями. В целом мы хотим отметить позитивные результаты напряженной работы участников технической экспертной группы по индикаторам и хотим также отметить и организацию и поддержку этого процесса со стороны секретариата. Также хотим в целом позитивно видим указанные в документе SBSTTA-25/2 следующие шаги, которые там предлагаются. Особенно хотим отметить важность пункта о диссегрегации информации для всех ключевых headline индикаторов, как указано в параграфе 17 пункте А. Хотели бы также получить разъяснение по ряду моментов, например, пункт С параграфа 17. Имеется ли в виду работа для всех трех групп индикаторов, представленных в мониторинговой программе, а также уточнить, каким, собственно, образом будет происходить дезагрегация, как предложено там в тексте, например, по гендерному признаку для всех индикаторов, ну, например, площадь вечной мерзлоты или процент мангровых лесов. В целом поддерживаем предложенные рекомендации и поддерживаем обращение к следующему совещанию вспомогательного органа по исполнению, поскольку нам представляется это основной орган, который будет решать дальнейшие вопросы, касающиеся системы индикаторов, отчетности, планирования, подготовки национальных стратегий. В то же время у нас нет уверенности в необходимости, как уже отмечали другие страны, такого большого количества вопросов, тем более сформулированных в таком широком спектре. Возможно, они могут быть использованы не столько в качестве индикаторов, сколько в качестве вспомогательных вопросов для помощи странам в подготовке отдельных разделов национальных отчетов. Поэтому мы, конечно, поддерживаем идею о том, что должна быть прямая связка и с вспомогательным органом по исполнению для интеграции в темплейты по национальным отчетам. В связи с этим на данный момент мы, пожалуй, готовы скорее принять к сведению аннекс, да, все-таки мы за сохранение take note. Хотели бы еще обратить внимание на параграф 19 и его вторую часть. Необходимо определить, какой все-таки из вспомогательных органов может делать такую рекомендацию конференции сторон. На наш взгляд, это прерогатива вспомогательного органа по исполнению, а не в НТТК. Свое дальнейшее отношение к предложениям конкретных вопросов в приложении мы сможем лучше определить тогда, когда, согласно параграфу 4 того же приложения, будут представлены пояснительная информация и особенно, как уже отмечала Япония, детальный перечень терминов, многие из которых требуют четкого определения и критериев. Поэтому в настоящее время вопросы сформулированы настолько общие и всеобъемлющие, что, например, дать ответ «да» полностью будет маловозможным, а в некоторых случаях это, честно говоря, будет просто неправда, и нам не нужно неправильное представление результатов. Готовы работать дальше, в том числе над текстом аннекса в составе контактной группы. Спасибо, господин председатель.
Thank you, Russian Federation. I invite delegates to keep the time, please. And you asked a number of questions. Of course, we need to understand that this work is in parallel also with the preparations that SBI will be doing for national reports. Time in some ways against us. The piece that we have already produced by the ATEC is this annex with the binary indicators, with the questions. Of course, there is an opportunity to improve the content, the questions, and as you said, these questions can be also helpful for preparing national reports. So that's a good way also to take them into account. So all these proposals to improve this annex that will serve as, this is a concrete element we have to analyze at this stage. Of course, the whole piece will be together for next Substa, when we have more information on headline indicators, the methodologies, in units to be used. But that will be for Substa 26. It's also very limited time. It's a lot of work what ATEC have in front. But the best we can do during this meeting is to analyze carefully and to see how much we can improve or reduce the number of indicators on the binary questions. Remember, this is an easy reference to see how parties are making progress in advancing without going to the details that we're going to see on the methodologies for the different headline indicators, components, and complementary ones. One step at a time. Thank you very much. Now I'll give the floor to Canada, followed by Norway and St. Lucia. Canada, you have the floor.
Thank you, Chair. We would like to begin by acknowledging the Maasai, indigenous people of the land on which we meet today. We would like to pay respect to elders, past and present, and thank Kenya and UNEP for hosting this meeting and welcoming us so warmly. Canada acknowledges and welcomes the work of the ATEG as completed to date on the binary indicators and the update that was just provided. Canada is of the understanding that binary indicators were meant to be simple questions and is concerned with the current number of questions that party would be required to provide a response to. As Japan just mentioned, it is our understanding that they were meant to be a small set of questions for those goals and targets that do not currently have headline indicators. And as UK just stated, Canada would welcome work on reducing the number of questions. Canada would welcome clarity on whether the binary indicator questions will be negotiated by party at Substa, or if parties are to expected to adopt the slate of binary indicators question as is. Canada has also concerned that the work to date of the ATEG has focused on the binary indicators and has not prioritized work on the headline indicators. But we are noting the update that was just given on the progress on the headlines indicators from the co-chair of the ATEG, and we are eager to hear more, in particular element 1, 2, and 3 contained in the paragraph 1A of the ATEG's terms of reference. Canada understands that element 1 in paragraph 1A of the terms of reference to include work on proposing new headlines indicators to fill gaps in goal B, C, and D, and target 2 and 13 to 22, and wishes to see clarity on if this is under the mandate of the ATEG. Canada is supportive of the recommendations to SBI to consider adding the binary indicators questions to the national templates and online reporting tool This will help facilitate consistent and standardized reporting across parties, and Canada looks forward to seeing those end-lines indicators being considered for inclusion to the national template and online reporting tool as well. Canada will submit the suggested change to draft recommendation text. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Canada. Now I'll give the floor to Norway, followed by St. Lucia and Spain.
Thank you, Chair. As others, we believe adopting a full set of indicators at COP16 is crucial. It will allow parties to report on and have their national efforts recognized throughout the decade. And if we do not adopt this at COP16, Norway believes that we are sure to fall behind in the cycle of the global framework in a way that we may not recover from, repeating the failures of the Aichi framework. And everything we do here should keep this in mind. Norway would like to thank the ATEG for their great efforts so far, enabling Substa to discuss the binary indicators of the monitoring framework already in its 25th meeting. In our view, the group has made good progress, and we support its work plan to complete their mandate in time. And that is why we support SBSTTA-25 to engage with the concrete proposal in the annex with a view to how it may be finalized. On the concrete proposal, Norway supports the approach on breaking down the indicator into several simpler parts of the target. We believe this is not necessarily more complicated or burdensome to answer. On the contrary, it can make the task clearer and simpler. An example of this in Target 1, if Norway was to answer a question on whether we have biodiversity-inclusive spatial planning for land use change, a combined answer would be no, but would for us have questionable usefulness. However, if the question were subdivided, we would answer no for terrestrial but yes for inland water. And this would allow us to be more clear about the fact that we need to improve our efforts specifically in terrestrial management, but also to highlight our system for inland water. For us, this makes the reporting process more relevant for ourselves and also for CBD. And we believe an important role of the indicators is to help the party identify its own strengths and areas for improvement clearly. However, we should discuss ways to streamline the proposal, and we are open to reducing the number of questions. We will submit a few proposed tweaks to the Secretariat to questions under Goal B concerning sustainable use versus sustainable management, and Target 1 concerning ecosystem groups as just outlined. We will also be pointing out that the proposed binary indicator for Target 13 is in conflict with the decision on DSI from Montreal, and it needs to be reworked to be in line with that decision. Thank you.
Thank you, Norway, for your comments. And as Japan said, also still issues to be solved in terms of DSI. And also, we are in between. We want more detail or we want less indicators. Some parties are saying we want few less to facilitate reporting, and some others justify the need to disaggregate in more detail. So let's be practical. I mean, this could not be perfect, but do we have 100 binary indicators, or we want a manageable number? So this is part of our role here when we analyze in detail the annex. I've been listening that there are many proposals to improve some of the questions and also some of the binary indicators so far. So let's be practical in what is realistic and manageable when this turns back to you, when you will prepare your national reports. Now I'll give the floor to St. Lucia, followed by Spain and Belgium. Please let me know, St. Lucia, if you are speaking on behalf of the GRULAC region. You have the floor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This statement is presented by St. Lucia on behalf of Latin American and the Caribbean countries.
Then you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. We would like to thank both the Secretariat and the United Nations Environmental Programme and the Convention on Biological Diversity for organizing this meeting. The first after the historical 15th conference of the parties of the CBD, where we all agreed to halt and reverse biodiversity loss, promote the conservation of biodiversity, its sustainable use and equitable sharing of benefit arising out of the use of genetic resources and its derivatives through the combined Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. As we said in the closing plenary of COP15, GBF will be a transformative agenda, able to contribute to the implementation of the free objective of the Convention in Latin America and the Caribbean countries, advancing towards sustainable development with the support of appropriate funding, capacity building, and technological transfer. Related to item 3A, GRULAC has already expressed our commitment to review and to continue the progress of the monitoring framework. In this regard, GRULAC highlights our satisfaction with the hard work developed by the ATEG on indicators and the Secretariat, whose partial outcome will be introduced to all members, state, and stakeholders in this meeting. However, GRULAC would like to emphasize on the following. Our concern about the complexity of the monitoring system with proposed headline indicators, which can represent a huge challenge for developing countries to be able to measure the performance, so that we would like to keep the number of headline indicators to a minimum. Headline indicators must be articulated with national indicators to carry out adequate, consistent monitoring of national goals progress. Our experience has shown that parties applying these national indicators rather than headline indicators. The parties must commit to applying a series of national indicators that can be articulated at the regional and global levels. We would also like to highlight the need to address the imbalance in the existing headline indicators and develop in a timely manner the indicators related to the sustainable use, benefit sharing, and means of implementation, which are of particular importance to developing countries. The monitoring frameworks need to address three pillars in a balanced manner. Otherwise, we risk lacking adequate understanding of the challenges and the opportunities for the implementation of the GBF. We also need monitoring instruments that consider IPLC's rights and ensure participation of indigenous people and local communities, women and youth. For GRULAC, the act of projecting, reporting, and informing by government must be as relevant as the national implementation of what our government approve in particular national trust strategies, so that we have responsibilities to ensure monitoring framework is effective, is efficient, and streamlining, avoiding highly complex indicators that are not synergistic and consistent with other related forums, such as the SDG and other environmental conventions. The success of the monitoring framework will be achieved with the prompt and effective distribution of technical teams and participation of key stakeholders through a vigorous program to strengthen the capabilities and financial resources to achieve a full understanding of the headline indicators. I thank you very much, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, St. Lucia, on behalf of the Latin American and Caribbean countries. Now I'll give the floor to Spain, followed by Belgium and Switzerland.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. España apoya la elaboración de un marco de seguimiento sólido y reconoce y agradece el importante trabajo realizado por el Grupo ad hoc de expertos técnicos, el ATEG, sobre indicadores. Valoramos positivamente la propuesta de indicadores globales a obtener a partir de respuestas binarias y las correspondientes preguntas y respuestas incluidas en el documento SBSTTA-25, como primer resultado del trabajo del ATEG en la revisión de los indicadores globales. Querríamos destacar la conveniencia de revisar los indicadores propuestos y estamos dispuestos a apoyar este trabajo en adelante con vistas a completar y mejorar, en caso necesario, su definición. Consideramos que los indicadores binarios deben ser claros y las preguntas propuestas deben permitir medir efectivamente el grado de cumplimiento con respecto a los correspondientes objetivos y metas. El número de preguntas propuestas para cada indicador no debería suponer una carga excesiva, y la definición de las posibles respuestas debería asegurar una interpretación objetiva y garantizar un seguimiento adecuado. España reitera la importancia de la información explicativa adicional prevista con un glosario detallado de los términos empleados en las preguntas y solicita que dicha información se comparta lo antes posible. Querríamos también subrayar la importancia de definir adecuadamente la metodología para calcular los indicadores globales, con una explicación clara sobre cómo se calcularán los indicadores a nivel global a partir de preguntas binarias y una indicación de cómo se hará la agregación. Nos gustaría solicitar que se ofrezca a las partes la oportunidad de revisar el marco de seguimiento en su totalidad, considerando todo el conjunto de indicadores, para garantizar que el progreso hacia el logro de todos los objetivos y metas se evalúe adecuadamente, dando así la oportunidad a las partes de revisar con posterioridad los indicadores debatidos durante SBSTA 25. Nos parece también oportuno resaltar la necesidad de tratar de abordar posibles carencias identificadas en una primera revisión, por ejemplo, respecto a la necesidad de considerar la integridad, conectividad y resiliencia de los ecosistemas en el objetivo A, la efectividad de la gestión de las áreas protegidas en la meta 3, la aplicación de planes de conservación de especies amenazadas en relación con la meta 4 y la necesidad de asegurar el comercio legal de especies en relación con la meta 5. Por último, querríamos proponer una serie de mejoras en el anexo 1 sobre los indicadores y hemos enviado por escrito a la Secretaría nuestra propuesta de enmiendas. Muchas gracias, señor presidente.
Muchas gracias, España. Es la segunda vez que escucho también la pregunta de cómo será el cómputo de los indicadores binarios para más adelante. Lo tomaremos en cuenta también con la Secretaría y con el copresidente de este grupo de trabajo para ver si nos puede también dar un poco más de información. Por supuesto, es información que los países van a responder de estas preguntas binarias y también hay otras agencias y otros actores que podrán estar apoyando en el seguimiento y en la preparación de los informes nacionales. Ahora doy la palabra a Bélgica, seguido de Suiza y Australia. Bélgica tiene la palabra.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. We would like to congratulate the Acting Executive Secretary and his team with supplying us with the pre-session document on time, which has facilitated our preparations for this meeting enormously. Belgium welcomes the work of the ATEC and the list of proposed binary indicators and the questions linked, which are included in the SBSTA document. Binary indicators are particularly relevant to get information on policy developments rather than the state of biodiversity. Belgium calls to have a proper gap analysis of the entire set of indicators, especially on headline indicators and binary indicators, but also including the component and complementary indicators. We welcome further work of the ATEC to address those critical gaps in the monitoring framework, as already mentioned by Germany. We also recognize the importance of keeping the monitoring framework as simple as possible, and we insist on using relevant existing indicators. This will enable us to concentrate on the efforts on the gaps. Belgium recalls that Table 1 of Annex 2 of Decision COP 15/5 was shared for information and was not agreed nor negotiated. At this stage, the ATEC has not proposed any new binary indicators for aspects that may not be sufficiently covered in the monitoring framework. Belgium supports that new binary indicators can be proposed to cover those gaps. And we particularly see the added value of additional binary indicators for Goal A and targets 3, 4, 5, 7, 10 in this regard. We are, however, not adding them at this stage. But we reserve the right to do so if the list of binary indicators is open for discussion. This will depend on the further work is conducted to have a proper gap analysis. Belgium also proposes some adjustments in the current set of questions linked to the binary indicators, including to support Egypt on behalf of the African countries to add a category not applicable to those proposed answers in case the questions does not apply to some parties. For example, for parties that do not have IPLCs or access to the sea. We also propose amendments to the draft recommendation to support further work of the ATEC. We will submit these changes in writing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Belgium. I was thinking in Formula One, you know, when one driver goes off or congratulates the Secretariat for the preparation of documents, can we penalize with 5 seconds? I'm not sure. Anyway, I'll give the floor now Switzerland, followed by Australia and Uganda.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Switzerland considers an operational monitoring framework, including headline indicators, as of critical importance as they provide the basis for a robust national reporting and a global review mechanism. It is therefore indispensable that the monitoring framework, and in particular all agreed headline indicators, are operational by COP16. Against this background, we welcome the hard work of the ATEC on indicators that has been done so far. Mr. Chair, Switzerland considers the proposed draft recommendation under this item to be a good basis for discussion. However, we would like to highlight the following suggested changes to the proposed recommendation with a focus on the future work of the ATEC and the Annex. First, regarding the focus of the work of the ATEC. While noting its progress, the ATEC should be encouraged to continue the work to address critical gaps, to improve the monitoring framework, and focus, as per its mandate, in particular on headline indicators that do not have an existing methodology. Furthermore, the ATEC should be encouraged to cooperate with biodiversity-related conventions, including through the Bern process on cooperation among parties of biodiversity-related conventions. In our view, this is important to make best use of the available expertise and practice under the other conventions. We suggest a new paragraph 1 bis to reflect these points. Second, on the way forward until Substat 26. In our view, and as mentioned by Germany, the ATEC should be encouraged to make the results of its work available well in advance of Substat 26. This would give parties sufficient time to review the proposed metadata for headline indicators that do not have an existing methodology. Third, on the proposed list of binary indicators in the Annex. We consider the list to be a good basis for discussion, but have several comments. First, as mentioned by the UK, Germany, Canada, and others, we should keep the number of binary indicators manageable and keep in mind the reporting burden. Secondly, for several proposed binary indicators, the options that can be chosen require some amendments. For example, we do not understand how the option Other contributes to the overall result of the binary indicator. Furthermore, and similar to Belgium, we are of the view that the option Not applicable should be added for some binary indicators, for example, for landlocked countries to select if marine issues are not applicable. Thirdly, Mr. Chair, as financial resources are covered by 3 headline indicators on target 19 of the GBF, and as binary indicators are, in our view, not ideal to cover questions on financial resources, we suggest to limit the indicators on this topic to the ones agreed under target 19. Finally, Mr. Chair, and similar to Japan and Norway, we have some questions on the proposed binary indicator 13.4. Mr. Chair, we have further suggestions for amendments for selected binary indicators, in particular for Goal B and targets 1, 6, 8, 12, 17, and 20, and will submit our suggested changes in writing. I thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, Switzerland. Seems there's an appetite and the need to work on the Annex in order to improve it in terms of number of questions, number of indicators, maybe these additions like non-applicable for some of them. So it looks like we should go to the establishment of a contact group, but I will keep listening. But I see some consistency in support the approach and to keep working on this and to try to improve this Annex, and also some elements on the recommendations derived from this meeting, and of course in the understanding that we're still in a process of building the monitoring framework that we conclude by the end of next Substat meeting. Now I give the floor to Australia, followed by Uganda and Indonesia.
Thank you, Chair. Australia views agreement to the headline indicators as critical to the ability to track progress in implementing the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework and to informing the development of parties' own national biodiversity strategies and action plans. We appreciate the RTEG's work to date. However, we note the ongoing need to address critical gaps in headline indicators, which we understand to be a key component of the RTEG's terms of reference. Without addressing these gaps, we will be without a timely and robust way to measure implementation and demonstrate progress against the Global Biodiversity Framework. We believe there is a real risk that parties will not be in a position to consider these indicators as they develop their NBSAPs. This is of particular concern for targets with timeframes before 2030. As such, Australia, like Switzerland, seeks an additional paragraph 1 bis to reflect this concern. This would read, notes that further work is required by the ad hoc technical expert group to address critical gaps in the headline indicators as per paragraph 1AI of the group's terms of reference in Annex 2 to Decision 15/5. We will submit our proposed amendments directly to the Secretariat. We, like others, believe there is an opportunity to streamline the binary indicators and look forward to fruitful discussions to settle these binary indicators at this meeting. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. Please provide the paragraph to Secretariat, because we're going to work on the recommendations. We're going to open the annex in aggregation or elements in the indicators and also in the questions. Thank you very much. Now I'll give the floor to Uganda, followed by Indonesia and the European Union.
Thank you, Chair. The binary responses alone, Chair, may not give a true picture of the situation on the ground in respect of the various targets of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework. The responses, Chair, need to be based on data. It is not just ticking yes or no. Therefore, support for data collection and analysis is critical to facilitate responses to the binary questions, and we would like to see this reflected in the draft recommendations. Chair, lastly, Uganda supports and aligns itself with the statement that was made by Egypt on behalf of Africa. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Uganda. I'll give the floor to Indonesia, followed by the European Union and Sweden.
Thank you, Chair. Indonesia supports the use of binary indicator as one of the measuring tools to be included in national report. We are of the view that this will provide a convenient means to convey results and achievement. However, there are certain principles that, in our view, require further clarification or adjustment. Some of the findings we wish to address are presented here, with the rest being conveyed directly to the Secretariat. The principle that Indonesia seeks clarifications on are as follows. The first, the concept of binary indicators appears to include not only yes or no questions, but also numerous multiple choice questions.
Can you maybe put your headset away from your microphone? Or Australia? Yeah, it's off. It's off. Thank you.
The concept of binary indicator appears to include not only yes or no question, but also numerous multiple choice questions. These can lead to misinterpretation in providing accurate answers. Therefore, it is essential to ensure that binary questions do not mislead the agreed upon target, causing specific biases due to simplified responses. Further elaboration is necessary for drawing conclusions from target with more than one binary questions. The use of ambiguous words such as significant or partially, which may be interpreted differently in each country, should be avoided or clarified. Specifically, we would also like to raise the following points. From the Annex Point 1.2, please do remove the phrase "if there are plans" and directly presents the questions. In Point 1.3, the use of word "they" is unclear in its reference due to the previous sentence describing the participatory planning process. Point 6.2 requires additional explanation for the term significantly and dedicated. Point 15.3 appears to be irrelevant in answering the proposed indicator text and should be removed from the list. In conclusions, we emphasize that each country's capacity to meet the agreed headline indicator KMGBF varies. Therefore, knowledge and technical exchange are needed to ensure that the monitoring process aligns with the KMGBF, gathering best practice and lessons learned from relatively successful countries in biodiversity monitoring is the best way to understand how the monitoring mechanism can function effectively. In addition to above, our response to other questions have been conveyed to the Secretariat as mentioned previously. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Indonesia. I request to speakers to give your intervention slow so interpreters can better follow you. And thank you for those reflections. We should remember that when at the COP, there were like two big teams. One, finishing developing the framework, goals and targets, and also the monitoring framework. And during discussions, the best scenario is to have headline indicators with full methodologies and units to do it. When we are not available to do that, the idea of the binary indicators came as a way to show if we are doing progress when we don't have percentages or parametric or not parametric units to report. So this is an easy reference to know if we are addressing under some level the different targets. But the best information will come when we finish. So the best of the ATEC will come for next Substa when we have the methodologies and the different units to measure in detail. When we are not able to do that, then is when we use the binary indicators. But we need to be practical. Thank you so much. I'll give the floor to EU, followed by Sweden and Finland.
Thank you, and good morning, everyone. The European Union would like to thank the ATEC for its organization of work, its hard work on metadata and the progress made, including on the proposed way forward for the global indicators from binary responses as provided in the annex of the draft Substa recommendation 25.2. We fully support the pragmatic approach from the ATEC, which in line with COP decision 15.5 started its work by reviewing and improving the formulation of the binary questions from which global indicators will be derived and used by parties with the headline indicators in their national reports. And in the online reporting tool, of course. I can't not say that. So sorry for this private addition. In line with the COP decision 15.6 and thereby reinforcing the legitimacy of the scientific and technical content of the global review of collective progress scheduled for consideration at the 17th meeting of the COP. The EU is committed to work hard with all parties this week to streamline the list and improve the wording of some binary questions to be integrated in the monitoring framework of the GBF to be considered in its entirety at the 26th meeting of Substa for consideration at COP16. We support the changes in the draft recommendation as proposed in the Wilm report and will submit these changes in writing. The EU is really looking forward to engage in the discussion on the binary questions of the annex that we hope, as you just said, Chair, will take place this week. We know they will be challenging at times, but we are confident that with your support and cooperation, we will arrive at a good outcome at the end of the week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, EU. Now I'll give the floor to 3 European countries, Sweden, Finland, and France.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Sweden welcomes the work of the ATEC on indicators and takes note of the list of binary indicator questions as provided in the annex of document Substa 25.2. The binary indicator questions are an important element of the monitoring framework to easily measure progress towards selected parts of the goals and targets at global level. The binary indicator questions should address important goal and target components and fill some of the gaps that the adopted headline indicators cannot fill. They are particularly important for goals and targets where we have no headline indicator at the moment. Sweden is open to discuss additional binary indicator questions for targets currently not covered by the Arctic proposal, but newly proposed binary questions should be reviewed by parties before they are discussed at the next Substar. Sweden believes that if the answer option not applicable is included in the answer option, an explanation should be given on why this option was selected in order to be fully transparent. Sweden believes that the binary indicator question can address relevant parts of the GBF Section C in connection with relevant goals and targets. Sweden considers it is important to avoid duplications of the binary indicator questions with the questions and the templates for national reporting. Sweden supports the list of binary indicator questions and answer options in general, but believes that certain tweaks and additions would improve the utility and usability. We will provide proposals in an annex to this statement. Sweden considers that the ARTEC had the mandate to review the entire monitoring framework, especially the headline indicators, and identify gaps and propose ways to address them. Priorities are set out in the terms of reference, but this does not include that the ARTEC can make suggestions for additional headline indicators or binary indicator questions for consideration by parties at Substar 26. We have additional proposals for the recommendation text and will provide that as an annex in the statement. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Sweden. I'll give the floor to Finland, followed by France and Colombia.
Chair, Finland highly appreciates the work done by the ARTEC. Compared with the previous decade and the insufficient tracking of the IT targets, we are now making progress and the momentum needs to be kept up. We support the proposal by the ARTEC to divide the binary questions into sub-questions to address the relevant components of the goals and targets. We also support the more nuanced options for answering the questions rather than just saying yes or no. We agree with Norway, who concluded that this makes the answering easier, not more difficult. Finland stresses that guidance is needed for differentiating especially between the answers yes, partially, and no, but under development, since these are likely to be the most crucial choices in answering. For example, regarding question B1, does your country have policies or action plans targeting the maintenance and enhancement of ecosystem functions and services of benefit to people? Is it enough that ecosystem functions and services are mentioned sporadically and/or in passing in various government strategies, or should they be the very focus of some national goals and actions to qualify for answering yes, partially? Some questions could perhaps be better answered by giving a percentage number. For example, this could apply for question 12.1, are areas in your country under urban sustainability planning that incorporates the management of green and blue spaces for biodiversity? The answer could be given as a percentage of cities that have such planning compared with those that do not have. Otherwise, a country could answer yes for some cities with only, on one hand, 10% and on the other, having 90% having such planning. Finland does requests that additional explanatory information, including a detailed glossary of the terms used in the questions, will be provided. This additional explanatory information should be shared as soon as possible. Finland proposes that the binary indicators are subjected to a review process between Substar 25 and 26. This process could utilize the online discussion forum, given the forum is further developed in terms of its structure and in providing parties a clear role in participating in it, as well as by providing precise questions on the binary indicators. Finland suggests some amendments in the recommendations in order to reflect the mandate of the ARTEC at Substar 26, taking into account the work in progress in the ARTEC. Thank you.
Thank you, Finland. So in general, I keep listening the will to continue working with this approach, the opportunity to work in improving the annex, the number of questions, indicators, So please bear this in mind in your next interventions. Still a long list of parties asking for the floor, but I'm listening about the same argument supporting the approach. So let's be very brief. I hear this suggestion to consider a peer review process before the outcome on the monitoring framework goes to Substat. Let's see the opportunities to do that, because we work to have the documents on time for this meeting, and the time is very limited, so we need to be very efficient to finish the work of the ATEC in order to have an opportunity to go to suggest process for peer review. Just be aware that this is very tight in terms of the time available. But we take note of this. So I'll give the floor to France, followed by Colombia and Bosnia and Herzegovina. France, Colombia.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La France remercie et félicite la TEG pour son travail. Nous comprenons, comme vous venez de le rappeler, que celui-ci est en cours et que le cadre de suivi sera progressivement amélioré. En vue de cette amélioration, nous souhaitons appuyer la nécessité que les discussions à venir permettent de renforcer le cadre de suivi du cadre mondial pour la biodiversité de Kunming-Montréal, afin d'assurer que chaque objectif et cible soit effectivement assorti d'ici la COP16 d'un indicateur qui soit basé sur la science. Cela va également dans le sens des commentaires déposés sur le forum en ligne. Nous demandons donc à ce que le cadre de suivi puisse être revu dans son intégralité par les parties lorsque l'ATEC aura adressé la question des manques qui subsistent sur celui-ci. Aussi, nous souhaitons souligner la nécessité que les indicateurs définis soient aussi pertinents et clairs que possible, en évitant autant que faire se peut l'écueil d'une multiplication inefficiente de leur nombre. À cette fin, nous appelons à revoir certaines formulations d'indicateurs binaires afin de réduire le degré de subjectivité qui est à ce stade inhérent aux formulations proposées pour certaines questions. Nous demandons également à ce que soit clarifiée la question de la prise en compte des réponses nuancées aux indicateurs binaires dans le calcul ou l'agrégation des indicateurs globaux. De manière générale, nous appelons donc, comme la plupart des parties s'étant exprimées jusqu'ici, à un cadre de suivi pertinent, opérationnel et efficace, et que toutes les parties auront effectivement la capacité de renseigner. Merci.
Thank you, France. Ahora doy la palabra a Colombia, seguido de Bosnia, Herzegovina y Togo.
Gracias, señor presidente. Con respecto al tema 3A, Colombia considera la adopción de la recomendación que se encuentra en el documento CBD-SBSTTA-25/2 y al respecto recomienda lo siguiente. Articular el enfoque de derechos de los pueblos indígenas y las comunidades locales, tanto en el contenido de los indicadores de cabecera como en su implementación. En línea con esto, Colombia recomienda tener en cuenta instrumentos para la medición del estado y transformación de la biodiversidad en territorios colectivos. Segundo, promover una instancia conjunta, científica, institucional y biocultural para la actualización y adecuación de indicadores de cabecera y complementarios previo a la COP16. Tercero, asegurar que los indicadores resalten la importancia del enfoque ecosistémico y holístico y cómo orientan el mejoramiento de las soluciones basadas en la naturaleza. Cuarto, respaldar la propuesta del Índice de Agrobiodiversidad realizada por la Alianza de Biodiversidad Internacional y el CIAT. Colombia considera esta como una herramienta útil para monitorear el proceso de la única meta del Marco Global de Biodiversidad que se enfoca en sectores productivos. Muchas gracias, presidente.
Muchas gracias, Colombia. Por favor, haga llegar su texto a la Secretaría. Ahora doy la palabra a Bosnia-Herzegovina, seguido de Togo y México.
Thank you, Chair. Bosnia and Herzegovina wish to express a high appreciation. Sorry, something is it okay? High appreciation for the work done by the members of the ATEC on indicators. Bosnia and Herzegovina generally supports the elements of the proposed global level indicators derived from the binary indicators responses for the global review of collective progress in the implementation of the framework. However, regarding the currently proposed wording of some questions and binary responses to be used in national reports and future outcomes of their aggregation, we do have some concerns. We believe that in many cases, such aggregated value will not reflect the factual state of the progress in the implementation of framework. As examples, we would like to bring your attention questions 1.1 and 1.3 related to Target 1, where there is no distinction between landlocked countries and those countries whose territories include marine areas, but no marine spatial planning has been adopted and implemented. The same example was used by many other parties here. We understand that aggregated data collected through proposed binary indicators can provide only general information on the existence or absence of particular policy framework. However, the implementation extent, as well as sectoral or geographical coverage in the country, will remain unknown. We would also like to bring to the attention that questions proposed for Target 13 do not cover capacity building component. Understanding the scope of capacity needs is critical to learn the abilities of parties to ensure the fair and equitable sharing of benefits arising from the utilization of genetic resources and digital sequence information, as well as traditional knowledge associated with genetic resources. And we can continue with examples. But we believe that in this short time at SBSTTA-25 is not feasible to deliberate, agree, and finalize the work on binary indicators. We think that SBSTA should encourage the ARTEG and should agree on advice to ARTEG how to continue the work on binary indicators rather than negotiate on the wording for specific questions and answers. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Bosnia. Now I'll give the floor to Togo, followed by Mexico and New Zealand.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Le Togo voudrait joindre sa voix aux commentaires du groupe africain présenté par l'Égypte. Je voudrais insister sur deux faits majeurs. Monsieur le Président, nous pensons que...
Please put your headset away from your microphone. Probably that's what is making this noise. Microphone to Togo, please.
Okay, thank you. Okay, merci beaucoup, Monsieur le Président. Je disais que le Togo voudrait joindre sa voix aux commentaires du groupe africain présenté par l'Égypte et voudrait insister sur deux faits majeurs. Monsieur le Président, nous pensons que les indicateurs, loin d'être simplement un outil de vérification des réalisations vers l'atteinte des objectifs du cadre mondial, constituent un véritable outil de motivation. En conséquence, le choix des indicateurs binaires nous aide à avancer, mais peuvent présenter des risques de maintenir les États dans le statu quo, dans la mesure où, dans la majorité des pays, certaines mesures existeraient. Les indicateurs devraient pouvoir mieux encourager les États à continuer les efforts et à augmenter leurs ambitions. Dans la perspective de réduire au minimum possible ces indicateurs, le groupe spécial pourrait examiner la possibilité de réserver à une ou à deux questions binaires et inclure pour chaque cible une option sur les mesures efficaces concrètes prises par les États. Pour terminer, Monsieur le Président, en termes d'observation générale, il est constaté que par endroit, l'option de pouvoir avoir une politique ou une stratégie constitue une sorte d'élément alternatif. Ces éléments devraient être cumulatifs dans la mesure où disposer d'une politique ne suffit pas pour atteindre les résultats visés, mais surtout les stratégies et les plans d'action. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Togo. Doy la palabra a México, seguido de Nueva Zelanda y China.
Muy buenos días. Sí. Muy buenos días. There. Okay. Muy buenos días, gracias señor presidente. México respalda la declaración realizada por Santa Lucía en nombre de los 33 países del GRULAC. México apoya decididamente los trabajos del grupo ad hoc de expertos técnicos sobre indicadores y favorece un diálogo constructivo que incluya el intercambio de saberes entre los múltiples actores participantes. Con respecto a las propuestas de indicadores binarios, consideramos que en algunos casos las preguntas podrían ser más explícitas y tener información de los países un poco más desagregada. Finalmente, México tiene algunas observaciones al texto del documento, así como propuestas concretas en la redacción de las preguntas de los indicadores binarios. Las entregaremos de manera escrita. Muchísimas gracias, señor presidente.
Muchas gracias, México, y por ser breve. Ahora doy la palabra a Nueva Zelanda, seguida por China y Argentina.
Thank you, Chair. 2030 is not far away. Aotearoa New Zealand is mindful that effective and timely implementation of the monitoring framework will be the ultimate indicator of its future success. We therefore must ensure it is fully operational following COP16 in time for 2026 reporting to help us understand if our collective efforts are on track. We note that this is not to preclude subsequent further improvements to the monitoring framework, and in this regard, the draft decision on this item may wish to recall COP15's decision to keep the monitoring framework under review as appropriate. We are grateful to the members of the RTEG for their work to support our discussions on strengthening the monitoring framework and welcome the early focus and progress on development of binary indicators as one way of addressing critical gaps. We consider the introduction of less absolute response options will be useful in driving more accurate and useful information. While ultimately it will be essential to ensure we have a core set of headline indicators in place to understand the effects of our interventions, these binary indicators will be the canaries in the coal mine for revealing how well we are doing in delivering the critical actions needed to ensure we are at least headed in the right direction. Just how many canaries we need, we agree, should be the subject of further discussion to ensure they are appropriately targeted to focus our attention where it is most needed. We note that just as for the targets themselves, it will be important to ensure we can measure our progress against cross-cutting considerations described in Section C of the Global Biodiversity Framework. Transparency and responsibility mechanisms are equally important to ensure we meet our commitments on how we will go about our work. We encourage work on improving operationalisation of these commitments also. Returning to the headline indicators, New Zealand is pleased to hear the RTEG's focus is now turning to these. We have some concerns as to whether the RTEG's work to provide advice on unresolved issues and address critical gaps to improve the monitoring framework is being overly constrained. We understand, for example, the RTEG could be in a position to identify effective proxies to measure progress against the framework as another way to address such gaps. We encourage the RTEG to explore such options. New Zealand generally supports the draft recommendations but considers closer examination of the proposed binary indicators is needed to consider possible refinements to ensure they are appropriately focused, and that we may wish to clarify our understanding of the nature and priorities for the RTEG's remaining work to ensure the group's members have clear direction on what is needed to fully implement their mandate. Noting work needed to operationalise headline indicators is yet to be completed, we support the proposals we have heard already today to add a recommendation on this work along the lines, for example, proposed by Switzerland. Thank you.
Thank you, New Zealand. I'll give the floor to China, followed by Argentina and Saudi Arabia. The list is still long, colleagues, and we're getting close to lunchtime. I hope we can close this agenda item before lunch, and it hasn't been yet the opportunity for some observers. So I please ask you to be very concrete in your following interventions. We hear a lot about the way to go, so I invite you to be brief. China, you have the floor.
谢谢主席先生。中国高兴地看到，在您的领导之下，昆明蒙特利尔全球生物多样性框架特设技术专家组取得了显著的进展，我们对此表示高度的赞赏。监测框架是国家更新和修订生物多样性战略与行动计划、编制、提交国家报告等工作的重要基础。因此，监测框架的制定需要充分考虑各个国家的不同国情，确保国家在不增加国家负担的前提下，将其应用于国家报告之中。我们注意到，专家组已针对监测框架中的空缺指标，开发了相应的2元指标，这为填报国家报告提供了基础。我们建议就这些2元指标提供更多详细的说明和指导，以支持国家报告中予以填报。我们也建议在2元指标清单中增加一个额外的对话框，允许国家酌情提供更加详细的国内信息。我们注意到，特设技术专家组还将在2元指标基础上，继续开发更加易于量化的标题指标，这有利于进一步完善监测框架。我们希望就国家使用这些指标能够进一步得到指导，包括具体的算法。我们将继续积极参与框架监测的制定进程。谢谢主席先生。
Thank you, China. Doy la palabra a Argentina, seguido de Arabia Saudita y Costa de Marfil.
Gracias, señor presidente. En adición a la intervención que formulara la distinguida delegación de Santa Lucía en nombre del GRULAC, deseo hacer las siguientes consideraciones. La Argentina considera que la implementación del marco mundial se verá fuertemente influenciada por la forma que tome el marco de monitoreo. Se debe evitar que la negociación del mismo se convierta en una renegociación de los resultados de la COP15. Por este motivo, la Argentina considera que es necesario que los indicadores mundiales estén estrechamente ligados al texto de los objetivos y las metas acordados en el marco mundial. En ese sentido, la Argentina propone modificar el texto de los indicadores del objetivo B y de las metas 6, 8, 9, 12, 13, 14, 15 y 22. Asimismo, la Argentina recomienda modificaciones a varias de las preguntas binarias a fin de reflejar adecuadamente los objetivos, las metas y los indicadores. Argentina agradece el trabajo del Grupo de Expertos sobre Indicadores y el camino propuesto para los indicadores mundiales construidos a partir de las respuestas binarias. Argentina apoya también a que la Secretaría proponga una modalidad para integrar las preguntas de indicadores binarios acordados en el template del 7º Informe Nacional para consideración del SBI. Finalmente, Argentina considera que aún falta desarrollar mejor los indicadores mundiales para decidir proponer a la COP adoptarlos e integrar las preguntas binarias a la planilla del 7º Informe Nacional. Mi delegación hará llegar por escrito estos comentarios a la Secretaría. Muchas gracias.
Muchas gracias, Argentina. Estaremos atentos a lo que haga llegar a la Secretaría y a trabajar en este anexo para mejorarlo. Doy la palabra a Arabia Saudita, seguido de Costa de Marfil y Brasil.
شكرا سيدي الرئيس. نود أن نتقدم بالشكر لفريق الخبراء على مشروع الاستبانة اللازم والهام جدا لتنفيذ الإطار واعتباره أساس للخطط العمل الوطنية للدول. ومن أجل تعزيز المؤشرات ومن واقع الاستبيان في المؤشرات، فإن بعض الأسئلة لا تنطبق على كل الدول، مثل ما ذكر زميلي ممثل مصر وأفريقيا عن بعض الدول التي ليس لها إطلالة على بحار أو محيطات، وكذلك واقع بعض الدول الاجتماعي أو التنظيمي أو التشريعي. هناك ملاحظة هامة أيضا، هي أن بعض الاستفسارات تحوي على عدة نقاط، ويطلب الإجابة عنها بصح أو خطأ، وقد لا تمثل الإجابة الإيضاح على أي نقطة هي الصح أو الخطأ. ولذا نقترح لمزيد من الفعالية للمؤشرات الهامة أن تشتمل كل الإجابات على فقرة إضافية هي إجابة أخرى لإتاحة التوضيحات اللازمة من قبل الدول. وشكرا لكم.
Thank you, Saudi Arabia. Now we'll give the floor to Côte d'Ivoire, followed by Brazil and India.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. La Côte d'Ivoire salue le travail abattu et relève que dans le domaine de la production des données, les outils de collecte de données sont capitaux et déterminent les résultats. Ainsi, les indicateurs en font partie. Sur cette base, la Côte d'Ivoire soutient l'intervention du groupe Afrique prononcée par l'Égypte et ajoute ceci. Dans la partie aperçue des travaux en cours du texte proposé, l'alinéa 14 de cette partie du document doit être revue. Si la réunion dont fait cas le test a eu lieu, certainement, alors la Côte d'Ivoire propose d'insérer le résumé. Dans la partie des indicateurs mondiaux, nous notons que les indicateurs binaires sont trop fermés et ne nous présentent pas concrètement ou suffisamment les efforts accomplis. Nous sommes d'accord pour avoir des indicateurs en nombre réduit, mais il faut s'assurer que votre indicateur mesure effectivement exactement ce que vous voulez. Si vous annoncez un cas, il faut qu'un indicateur afférent, sinon l'enlever ou trouver son indicateur. Ainsi, dans la cible 8 par exemple, réduire au minimum l'impact des changements climatiques, nous pensons que le volet réduction des risques a été oublié, quand on sait le nombre important de risques dont subissent nos océans. Dans l'objectif B relatif à la cible numéro 1, le test proposé n'intègre pas la réduction de pertes de zones de grande importance. Nous pensons qu'il faut compléter certainement l'indicateur et formuler un point 4 pour le faire ressortir. La cible 13 demande de promouvoir une augmentation significative des avantages. Pourtant, il n'y a pas d'indicateur afférent. Voilà quelques éléments comme ça que j'ai relevés, mais on vous reviendra de sous peu. Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Côte d'Ivoire. Please be sure to hand out your comments to the Secretary, indicating what changes in the different paragraphs of the recommendation and also for the annex on the particular indicators, as you just said. Thank you so much. Doy la palabra a Brasil, followed by India and Yemen.
Thank you, Chair.
From the outset, we would like to stress the need to ensure the adequate monitoring of all goals and targets of the coming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework in a balanced manner, and we expect the ATAG to address in a timely manner the persistent gaps that underlie the goals and targets related to sustainable use and benefit sharing, as well as means of implementation. We also take this opportunity to highlight the important role of regional intergovernmental organizations and platforms, such as the Amazon Cooperation Treaty Organization, in developing context-specific solutions to enhancing monitoring capabilities. Regarding the proposed binary indicators collated from binary responses, we take with concern that some of the proposed questions single out specific elements from the corresponding targets, while neglecting other relevant aspects. In doing so, they may provide an inaccurate understanding of the targets and risk prejudging which actions should be undertaken by contracting parties to implement a certain target. In line with what Argentina just said, we also believe that the discussion of the monitoring framework should not be a renegotiation of what was agreed upon in COP15. In this regard, we would mention that question 6.2 is not consistent with target 6 and that the binary indicator would benefit from an additional question as follows. Has your country identified and mapped priority invasive alien species? On a similar vein, question 8.3 lacks a specific linkage with impacts of climate change on biodiversity. With regards to target 9, we would highlight that this target does not address trade-related issues. On top of that, we fail to understand the lack of a dedicated question on policies to promote sustainable biodiversity-based activities, products and services that enhance biodiversity, which are of crucial importance to developing countries. We further believe an additional question should be included to assess whether countries have mapped the social, economic, and environmental benefits of wild species for groups in vulnerable situations. Moreover, we understand that question 9.4 is overly prescriptive, as there are multiple pathways to encourage and protect customary sustainable use other than the implementation of the plan of action. Similar concerns would also apply to questions 14.4, 20.1, 20.2, 20.3, 22.1b, 22.1c, where we noticed additional elements that are not under the respective targets, or we see that questions should be framed in a more concise and targeted manner. We believe questions on target 17 need to include more specific questions also on the benefits of biotechnology. And finally, we support the indicators proposed for target 13, including the proposed indicator for DSI, which we believe adequately reflects the decision of COP15 in this regard. We will be submitting our comments in writing. Thank you.
Muito obrigado, Brazil. So we look forward to your comments, and we take note also with Argentina the mention to have consistency between the indicators and the targets. I'll give the floor now to India, followed by Germany and Netherlands.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While thanking HITEC for the excellent work done so far, India welcomes the proposed monitoring framework for the Global Biodiversity Framework. However, detailed deliberations may be required regarding the indicators and related questions. They may be finalized after due deliberation according to the national circumstances, priorities, and capabilities. Achieving or capturing everything in one go in respect of every target of GBF may be difficult. India supports the adoption of an enhanced multidimensional approach to planning, monitoring, reporting, and reviewing with a view to enhancing implementation of the GBF. More focus, rather required focus, may be given in designing questions on indicators, especially on DSI vis-a-vis benefit sharing, as this is going to be an important resource mobilization strategy. Let me cite question number 13.4 from the document under target 13. Does your country have a legislative, administrative, and policy framework or measures under development to address the DSI and GRs? Actually, this should be a collective effort of producer and user parties. A single country may not be able to tackle improper utilization of the DSI on their GRs if the user country does not cooperate. The questions to be framed may have to capture the nuances of this complex process. Lastly, I wish to state that monitoring, reviewing, reporting based on indicators have to be adequately supported through capacity building, technical and financial assistance, and other relevant means of implementation of GBF. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much, India. Now I'll give the floor to Yemen, followed by Netherlands and South Africa. Your microphone is on, Yemen. Go ahead.
صباح الخير جميعا. حقيقة نثمن العمل الذي قام به فريق الخبراء والذي قام بعمل جيد. لا أريد أن أكرر ما جاء على لسان مجموعة كبيرة من الأطراف التي أبدت ملاحظاتها، لكن كان لابد أن أعبر عن مشاغلنا كدولة أقل نمو وتعاني من الحرب بعدد من النقاط. أولاً المؤشرات غير واضحة بشكل مطلوب، وقد تكون فيها صعوبة نتيجة لغياب أو ضعف المعلومات وأحياناً لدقتها على المستوى الوطني. كما نتطلع إلى تعريف إطار الرصد بشكل أكثر وضوح وتقليص الأسئلة لتمكننا من تزويد المعلومات بشكل عملي وإعطاء الإجابات السليمة. كما نحتاج إلى تحسين الأسئلة، تحديدها بشكل أوضح أيضاً، وهي ستساعدنا في إعداد التقارير. فمن المتوقع أن نواجه كدولة أقل نمو عدد من الصعوبات في توفير المعلومات لتغذية المؤشرات الرئيسية أو التكميلية نتيجة لضعف المؤسسي اللي تعاني منها بلداننا أو الأوضاع الغير مستقرة. فكثيرا من المؤشرات قد تربكنا وقد لا تتماشى مع ما هو كائن على الأرض نتيجة ما تمر بها كما أسلفت بلادنا من الإشكاليات السياسية والاجتماعية. فالتوازن بين المؤشرات تشكل أهمية لنا، وهي بذات الوقت تعد تحدياً لقدراتنا المتواضعة كتوفير المعلومات أو عكسها في عملية الرصد. نتطلع من الفريق الأخذ بالاعتبار بما ورد سابقاً والأخذ بانشغالات الدول الأقل نمو حتى لا نكون خارج نسق الأطراف الأخرى، فنحن نعمل بشكل جيد لمشاركة الأطراف لتحقيق وإنجاح هذه العملية. شكراً جزيلاً.
Thank you very much, Yemen. I still have 6 parties asking for the floor, and I hope we can finish before lunch, and also if we can stay a few minutes more to give the opportunity for some observers to take the floor and to close this item before lunch, hopefully. So I'll give the floor to Netherlands, followed by South Africa, Austria, and Costa Rica.
Thank you very much for the floor, Mr. Co-Chair. On behalf of the Netherlands, I would also like to thank the rapporteur for sending our thanks to the Secretariat and UNEP in our regards. The Netherlands recognizes the importance of a robust monitoring framework and appreciates the work done by the ad hoc technical expert group on indicators. The Netherlands welcomes the list of proposed global indicators derived from binary responses. In general, the Netherlands supports the ATEC suggestions to divide binary questions into sub-questions to address goals and targets components more precisely and to allow for more nuanced response options. At the same time, we also call for practicality in designing binary indicators for easier implementation, with a focus on limiting the number of binary indicators per target that captures the key elements in a meaningful way. Furthermore, we must be pragmatic and realistic about what the ATEC can achieve in the coming 5 months. The more agreement we can achieve in this week, the more progress we can also make at Subsidiary 26 and hence at COP16. As many other parties already mentioned, the Netherlands encourages the ATEC to continue the work to address critical gaps to improve the monitoring framework, in particular on headline indicators that do not yet have existing methodology. We also encourage the ATEC to provide this updated information in a timely manner for parties to review it before Substa 26. Lastly, the Netherlands also welcomes the online discussion forum to share views on issues related to the monitoring framework. However, we do see that the potential of this online discussion forum has not yet materialized. We would therefore encourage more guidance to engage in the forum with clear instructions to stimulate active participation. We're looking forward to work with you all this week to ensure a robust, effective and pragmatic set of indicators and to really move ahead on implementation. Thank you, Mr. Co-Chair. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Netherlands. I'll give the floor to South Africa, followed by Austria, Costa Rica, and Zimbabwe.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. South Africa supports the Africa Group statement made by Egypt. South Africa would like to emphasize the need for improvement and simplification of the wording of some of the binary questions and responses with a view to make them user-friendly for reporting purposes and also to align them with the content of various targets and indicators. We will submit our suggestions in writing. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, South Africa, for being so brief. I'll give the floor now to Austria, followed by Costa Rica, Zimbabwe, and last party, Malawi.
Thank you, Chair. The adoption of the monitoring framework for the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework by COP15 was a critical step, including the decision to keep the monitoring framework under review as appropriate. We thank the ATEC for its excellent work so far and understand that its work is going on in order to fully complete the mandate given to it. It is indeed a tremendous task that the ATEC has been given. With regard to the headline indicators, we generally believe that the number of the headline indicators needs to be kept as small as possible and necessary to measure global progress in the implementation of the GPF. We support the intervention of Sweden in that regard. We encourage the ATEC to continue its work to address critical steps in the monitoring framework and in that regard also to cooperate with biodiversity-related and relevant international organizations and processes, including the Bern process. On the binary indicators, we look forward to discuss the binary indicators in the meeting here. We find it of utmost importance that we all have a very clear understanding on the definition of binary indicators and what these indicators should serve for. They should not complicate our work or add unnecessary burden to the parties when doing the national reports, but provide information needed to address the headline indicators. Like others, we would like to have a small set of questions on headline indicators, keep the questions as short and simple as possible and very clear. To this end, we could also think about putting under each set of questions an empty box for parties to provide additional information if needed and appropriate to keep the number of questions small and for better understanding the answers provided. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Austria. Doy la palabra a Costa Rica, seguido de Zimbabue y Malawi.
Okay. Thanks, Chair. Costa Rica thanks the specialists and the Secretary for the work carried out. However, we wish to highlight three aspects that we consider very, very important. The first is in accordance with the provisions of the Decision 15/6, paragraph 7, we are currently updating our MBSAPs. This implies that we carry out a general review of the technical inputs we have to include, at least head indicators for each of the global biodiversity goals and targets at national level. After this Substa, we will review recommendations made on binary indicators to try to adjust them to the strategy update, trusting that these binary indicators will be maintained at COP16. Therefore, we request that the binary indicators recommendations be flexible and simple to avoid modifications to our MBSATs that could cause us a serious harm. Second, technological transfer and training for head indicators and their metadata are urgently needed. This is a very important since the head indicators will be included in national development policies and plans. We must make the necessary national arrangements and have the national providers of those data clearly identified because we want to actively collaborate with our national data on those indicators. Finally, We have a specific recommendation on the binary indicators proposed by the advisory group in Target 8, since this target specifically includes the term nature-based solutions, and yet the term is ignored in the question on binary indicator 8.2. Thank you very much.
Gracias, Costa Rica. Doy la palabra a Zimbabue, seguido de Malawi, Corea y un representante de IPLCs. Malawi, you have the floor.
Where is the floor? When you press it. So smart. Thank you so much, Chair. Zimbabwe aligns itself with the position of the Africa Group, as earlier echoed by Egypt. Chair, there is room and scope for strengthening of the monitoring framework to ensure inclusivity, objectivity, and practicality in the responses in order to give a clearer picture of the progress at national, regional, and global level. The binary responses, Mr. Chair, could further be triangulated with probing questions so that we get the issues coming from the various nations. I submit, Chair.
Thank you. Now I'll give the floor to Malawi, followed by Korea and Peru.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Malawi supports the statement made by Egypt on behalf of the Africa Group and welcomes the provisional monitoring framework and the work of the ad hoc technical working expert group so far to review and refine the monitoring framework. We appreciate the challenging task that the group had, and we do not wish to add to their heavy load. However, considering that if some of the issues are not resolved at global level, they will be transferred to the national level, and this may affect the coherent reporting that is expected. We want to propose that for paragraph 17b, the group should also, in their summary table of component and complementary indicators, include guidance on interpretation of indicators, as the information in some of the indicators is important for defining transitions, thresholds, and states. Malawi supports the proposal made by Uganda with regards to support for data collection and capacity development, as it also has a bearing on which methodologies would be adopted based on the data available in countries. We also would like to highlight the need for aligning the indicators with those used in the SDGs. As the work on the indicators continues, we recommend we should clearly identify which indicators from the SDGs have been used and on what targets of the framework to support, and this alignment should come as an additional recommendation. With regards to binary indicators, we would like to appreciate the work that has been put into this, and that it provides a good basis for discussion. We have these specific comments on binary indicators. One, regarding 1.1a, this indicator can be further subdivided. For example, for Malawi, with regards to question 1.1a under target 1, we have made progress with regards to terrestrial but not inland water. And if our response in this regard is D, it would assume as if this applies also for inland waters, which is not currently the case. For 8.2, this could be improved to be in line with the target, which, when considering nature-based solutions and ecosystem-based approaches, it is not just a question of either or, but and or. So this could be reflected in the question as well. For questions under target 20 and the others similar, we find that the question is limiting on significant actions that countries could take to strengthen capacity building and develop.
Please conclude, Malawi.
And therefore, 20.1, 20.2 could also have an option of on other in the responses. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Malawi. Now I'll give the floor to Republic of Korea, followed by Peru. And still more parties asking for the floor.
The Chair, we, Republic of Korea, very appreciate all hard work done by the expert group. We understand the lack of data and methodologies for some existing indicators, particularly for many developing countries, and the need of a long-term process to develop new indicators for some goals and targets, such as Goal C and Target 21 and 22. So, we agree to use the global binary indicators on the related target and goals if we don't have any other option. However, the binary indicators could weaken the monitoring mechanism of Kunming-Montreal GBF. Thus, the binary indicators should be used at a minimum level. And we encourage CBD keep focusing on the development of quantitative and science-based headline indicators for the target and goal without the indicators yet. In addition, for the binary indicators, we agree with the multiple answers suggested by expert group with a detailed and clear answering criteria standard for more accurate evaluation process. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Korea. Now I'll give the floor to Peru, followed by Venezuela.
Muchas gracias, señor presidente. Adicionalmente a lo expresado por Santa Lucía como representante del GRULAC, el Perú respalda el trabajo de la lista de desglose, ya que los indicadores de cabecera son centrales para medir el cumplimiento de cada objetivo y están formulados de manera sintética, lo cual puede hacer que cada país tenga dificultad para integrar elementos distintos en un solo dato, o que la integración no permita ver elementos...
Disculpe, Perú, ¿puede esperar un momento? Porque parece que no hay traducción al inglés. Can technicians verify translation into English? Is it working now? Adelante, Perú.
Start again or... Yes, okay. El Perú respalda el trabajo de la lista de desglose, ya que los indicadores de cabecera son centrales para medir el cumplimiento de cada objetivo y están formulados de manera sintética, lo cual puede hacer que cada país tenga dificultad para integrar elementos distintos en un solo dato, o que la integración no permita ver elementos que sean importantes a diferenciar. Recomendamos que el grupo de expertos brinde información lo más desglosado posible. Perú indica además que los indicadores binarios para la construcción de indicadores a nivel global son una alternativa metodológica útil, que integrará información proveniente de un número importante de indicadores y de países con distintas realidades. Esto hace necesario analizar con cuidado las preguntas que se están proponiendo para objetivos y metas seleccionadas. En el párrafo 16, el Perú considera valioso el trabajo del grupo de expertos técnicos sobre presentación de informes financieros, creado por decisión 15/7, referida a la movilización de recursos, que trabaja en los indicadores para el objetivo D y las metas 18 y 19, para lo cual se les recomienda trabajar de manera articulada con el grupo de expertos técnicos sobre indicadores, a fin de aportar a la implementación del marco global. Agradecemos, señor presidente, la oportunidad de expresar nuestras preocupaciones y adjuntaremos con detalle nuestros comentarios. Gracias.
Gracias, Perú. Doy la palabra a Venezuela.
Gracias, señor presidente. Venezuela suscribe la declaración presentada por Santa Lucía en nombre del GRULAC y considera que el marco de monitoreo es esencial para la efectiva implementación del marco global para la biodiversidad. Y de esta manera resaltamos el esfuerzo y los resultados positivos del grupo de expertos sobre indicadores. Sin embargo, hay elementos presentados en el anexo del documento 25/2 que no quedan claros. Ay, lo siento, perdí la... Si me da un segundo, por favor. Disculpe, señor presidente, es que la tecnología me jugó una mala pasada. Sin embargo, hay elementos presentados en el anexo del documento 25/2 que no quedan claros, ya que las preguntas para indicadores binarios deben reflejar el resultado esperado, los cuales deben sumarse a la misión global de detener y revertir la pérdida de biodiversidad. Así pues, en nuestra opinión, las preguntas deben centrarse en respuestas concretas, claras y sencillas y evitar, en la medida de lo posible, respuestas abiertas, ya que esto puede generar ambigüedad. Otro punto importante es que debe haber coherencia entre el lenguaje utilizado en el marco global y el marco de monitoreo. Coincidimos en que se debe realizar una revisión de los indicadores propuestos sin que esto implique una renegociación del documento. Gracias y disculpen.
Muchas gracias, Venezuela. Con eso hemos terminado las intervenciones de las partes. Aprovecharemos unos pocos minutos para dar la palabra a algunos observadores. Empezamos con la IPLC, micrófono al 225.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the International Indigenous Forum on Biodiversity, we pay our respects to the Maasai indigenous peoples and their traditional lands upon which we stand. The IFB welcomes the work of the ATEG on indicators and its ongoing efforts. The monitoring framework is severely imbalanced at this point in time, with very few headline indicators for targets 14 to 23, and no headline indicators for targets 22 and 23, which are vital to ensure the full and effective implementation of the Kunming-Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework, especially for the roles and contributions of Indigenous peoples and local communities. Regarding the methodology for the global level indicators, collated from the responses to the binary yes-no questions in the national reports, the IFB thinks that they are a good start, but do not provide sufficient information to measure the achievements of the targets. Therefore, the IFB proposes to add ways for parties to provide explanations and more details regarding their responses. The IFB will present proposals as appropriate through the Secretariat, and this was a major concern for many of the Indigenous and local communities expressing concern about at times lack of communication around these issues. The IFB urges the ATEG on indicators and SBSTTA-25 to fully take into consideration the work of the Working Group on Article 8J and related provisions on traditional knowledge indicators in order to provide further enhancement to the monitoring framework. The IFB suggests including a new paragraph in the recommendation section of CBD-Subsidiary-25/2. We'd like to seek party support for our proposal. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much. Now I'll give the floor to United Nations. Is microphone to 163.
Thank you, Chair. This is Kenya. We were not able to get the slot as should be, but it's okay.
Go ahead, please.
Kenya aligns with the statement made by Egypt on behalf of Africa and also welcomes the sentiment expressed by Uganda on the need for data to inform this process.
We equally welcome the progress the ad hoc technical expert group on the indicators for Kunming Montreal Global Biodiversity Framework has done. Specifically, Kenya notes of the generality in the questions of measuring Target 1 and proposes the need to encourage parties to have a record of spatial planning for each area and possibly derive a percentage of biodiversity areas where there are spatial plans developed in a participatory manner. The ad hoc technical expert group on indicators, therefore, will require to consider real places that include protected areas of all forms, other effective area-based conservation measures, key biodiversity areas, and other area-based measures. These are inclusively included in the World Database for Protected Areas. I submit, Chair.
Thank you, Kenya, and sorry for the mislabeling. Dear colleagues, we are over time. Let's use the best way, the next 8 minutes to finish. So I invite observers to provide 2 minutes presentations in order to close this properly. So I'll give the floor to you, representative, microphone 27110.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the Global Youth Biodiversity Network. We emphasize that living in harmony with nature will only be achieved if we start putting in sufficient effort to transform our existing domain system that brought us to this socio-ecological crisis. This principle equally applies when we are talking about our monitoring systems and frameworks. The monitoring framework of the KM-GBF must go beyond simply accepting what is established and easy if we are serious about transformative change. Prevailing ways monitoring have been shaped by dominant value systems that are underpinned by power inequalities. A transformative monitoring framework demands that we take active steps to fully integrate cultural diversity and the diverse values of nature. We highlight that the KM-GBF monitoring framework still overemphasizes instrumental values above non-instrumental values. Indicators to measure non-instrumental values are a gap, and we must invest the necessary effort and resource to develop these and advance them toward being ready to be used broadly. With regard to youth, we continue to stress the importance of monitoring the specific needs and contributions of young people in order to make this visible and to produce the needed evidence to inform youth response actions. This must be kept in this list of binary indicators and including monitoring young people's participations in decision-making process and their access to justice and information. Furthermore, we propose that capacity building for and by young people must also be captured by this set of indicators. On the annexes under consideration, we recognize that the binary indicators provide valuable.
Thank you, Youth. Please provide your statement in written. Now I'll give the floor to representative of women. Yeah, the system is limited to 2 minutes. That's why.
I am speaking on behalf of the CBD Women's Caucus. As Target 23 mandates the gender-responsive implementation of the KM-GBF, we request to make the following improvements to ensure that gender equality and human rights are mainstream in the implementation of the KM-GMB. First, the monitoring framework and its indicators must support and enable comprehensive and holistic reporting on the implementation of the KM-GBF, covering quantitative as well as qualitative elements of the goals and targets, not only on the status of biodiversity, but also on people, with considerations given to rights-based and gender-responsive implementation. Second, in order to meet a robust, consistent, and ambitious monitoring and reporting, all goals and targets must equally have headline indicators. These will allow national, regional, and global progress to be equally tracked and reported globally for an assessment of how parties and the whole society are advancing on the achievements of the goals and targets without any distinction. And third, It is imperative that all relevant indicators are gender disaggregated by sex, ethnicity, population, group, and other aspects, following a similar approach to the SDG indicators. These considerations align with the Gender Plan of Actions and initiatives to make women and girls in all their diversity visible and count and ensure their full and effective participation in the implementation of the GBF. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative of Women. I would like to ask just parties to raise your hand if on the recommendations from IIFB to include some language, if you support that to be considered in our debates. I see one hand there from Pari. Thank you very much. That was Canada, yes? Yeah, thank you. Now, last observer, because I need to establish contact group, is the representatives from national. Microphone to 258.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. I am taking the floor on behalf of subnational and local governments major group. We welcome the increased recognition of subnational and local governments in the CBD negotiation. The subnational and local governments do know how hard local people work voluntarily in each part of the world to tackle with threats to biodiversity in their ardent desire to pass on the precious nature to next generations. The best way to repay their devotion is a fruit of the negotiations here that lead to immediate actions and international cooperation with the best available knowledge and policy tools to prevent further biodiversity loss. In order to achieve GBF goals and targets and to ensure human well-being, we stand ready, making maximum use of resources to play essential roles to implement appropriate, effective, and practical solutions within the subnational and local context. We'd like to take this opportunity to deliver on a strong commitment to contribute to the GBF by fostering its implementation, promoting monitoring by the whole of government and whole of society approach, sharing our experiences with the international community, and evolving as pioneers to spark transformative change. We are looking forward to having a productive meeting. Thank you.
Thank you very much, representative of subnational and local authorities. Last word, representative NGOs 239, and then I will proceed to the establishment of a contact group.
Thank you, Chair. I'm speaking on behalf of the Nature Conservancy. TNC recognizes the need for a streamlined reporting framework, including the use of binary indicators where appropriate. However, in many cases, the draft questions for the binary indicators in the annex are too generic to provide meaningful data points that will allow us to measure progress. Specifically, for Target 1, as mentioned by Norway, TNC sees a need to disaggregate questions on the spatial extent or coverage of biodiversity-inclusive spatial plans versus their effectiveness at addressing land, freshwater, and sea use change. For Target 8, it would be critical also to collect more qualitative data regarding the type of actions parties are taking to prevent impacts of climate change on biodiversity and to support national adaptation, resilience, and mitigation efforts, respectively. Finally, we believe a Target 14 on mainstreaming is the most transformative target for ensuring the success of the framework. Reducing this large body of work to such a limited set of questions may not be representative of the progress and efforts made by parties. We suggest, therefore, at a minimum, to disaggregate binary responses regarding each sector identified as having significant impacts on biodiversity. We request party support for these suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you, delegates, for your useful comments and suggestions. We have had a very rich discussion on many issues. We note major areas of convergence. I will not repeat all of them. We have a range of views that require further discussion. So I propose to establish a contact group to focus on the binary indicators in the annex with the following mandate. The contact group will be co-chaired
by Jan Plesnik from Czechia and Adams Toussaint from St. Lucia. The contact group will focus on the annex to the document containing the list of binary indicators and questions. Also, the co-chairs of the ATEC, Maria Cecilia Londoño Murcia, I don't know if virtually, but Mr. James Williams will serve as resource persons for the contact group. And the contact group will meet, we will let you know the time. So please be aware of the screens, where it would be exactly the time and place for the meeting of the contact group. And of course, we are very conscious that will not be more than 2 contact groups during the whole meeting. So there is no need to remind us that. So we'll be very conscious on that. And all parties and observers are welcome to participate in the contact group in line with our standard practice. So we are now at the end of our allotted time, and I would like to bring our morning session to a close for lunch. I don't know if there is a message from Secretariat. Any message? I would like to remind you to make sure that you have uploaded your written statements. If not, please do so within 1 hour after the close of this session. And I also invite you to attend the different side events program. And I hope you have a good lunch. Thank you.